You know what does help when you're like doing any sort of live stream is that you actually make it visible to people. Oh god. I was like, wait, why is no one here? Hmm. And then I saw that it was unlisted. So it was just invisible to anyone. Oh my god. Okay. Great start to the day. Hello everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. Zoom in a little bit. Yeah. We'll kick it off with I don't know, the handful of people that are here. Hello, Pewdie. Good to see you. Thank you, as always, for being here, one of the first ones. Oh, boy. I think I was just too busy um, with organization and chatting to people on LinkedIn because we're getting into that phase where we have to do prep for Gamescom, you know? So I've been talking to people, getting things organized, making announcements, like all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we'll see what comes about it. I also just want to throw out a an announcement, I guess. Like if you are there at Gamescom, feel free to reach out to me, and I would love to connect. Love to talk to people in real life, maybe share some advice. Maybe there's even some collaboration opportunities for both of us. Maybe we can work together. That would be awesome. Because yeah, this year I have the goal of actually talking to as many environment artists as I can. Hoping to meet like a bunch of new people, and I'm trying to be like a bit more proactive with it this time around. So yeah, I'm hoping to meet as many people as I can. Hello, Sheila. Hello, McVal. Hello, Lily. Good to see you all here. Lovely to see you all. Oh, YouTube is such a boring auto translator. Like McVal, like you said, hey ya, like super excited, and it just makes it into hey. Come on. Come on, YouTube Translate. Don't try to diminish the power of someone being super excited. But yeah, what else is going on? Yesterday I finished up a lesson about. God, I worked on a couple of lessons. So yesterday I finished a lesson about what did I call it again? Common textures. So what I'm doing with that is like sort of like an introduction to like different texture maps. So I'm talking about what is ambient occlusion, what is normal map, what is roughness, blah 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 blah, with some visual examples so that people can understand all the texture maps before they then go into making them in Substance Painter. And then I do want to do more work on the portfolio lessons today, which I've done a little bit more work on yesterday. I do want to get those finished up over the weekend and then hopefully share it with all of you. That is the goal. And also this weekend, I want to experiment with setting up something new. Should I? It's not going to be of big consequence, really, but what I've always loved, I'll give a little sneak peek. What I've always loved about Beyond Extend is that we have a bunch of active members that are really keen to get other people into Beyond Extend, right? And we've never had a system where we would then like reward people for doing that. I mean, wherever I found out, because sometimes it's even hard to find out. Wherever I found out that that was the case, I would like thank them in person, right? Or I would thank them. I mean, it's always really appreciated. I think I want to take it like one step further. I want to, I don't know, give them something in return. So I'm gonna see if I can set up something of like a referral kind of program or something like that. Something that's like easy, lightweight for people to use, and then invite like a couple of people to already like test the system with me. And then maybe I don't know, maybe there's some exclusive goodies for you in the making for that. That would be sweet. So that's one thing that I wanted to do for the longest time, and now with the website being in a good place, we have a spot to actually run it. So I want to set up something like that. So that's going to be like my fun thing to do over the weekend. Hello, Barry Sahin. Good to see you. Welcome, welcome. But yeah, that's probably going to be my fun little thing to do over the weekend. Apart from that, I'm probably just going to be cracking on with some lesson content. I have a bunch of lessons that I want to write about, and specifically for like art fundamentals. So I've written about color theory. I'm going to probably finish that one up because that was pretty close. And then I want to write about composition. I want to write about composition in environment art. I think that could be pretty fun. So got a bunch more stuff to do. Yesterday I did some tweaks to the website. I'll show you just a couple of them. Hold on, let me make sure that we're not spoiling anything. Let me just let me do this real quick. Let me refresh. Nice. Okay. That sounds interesting. Hey, I'm glad you like it. Like, it's always like the weird back end kind of stuff is always like really, I don't know. It always sounds boring from the outside, but I would love to be able to give people, I don't know, some goodies for like forwarding us, because it's really appreciated. So yeah, something that we'll work on. Um, Let me show you something. So I've cleaned up the dashboard a little bit. So this is all live now. I've cleaned up some of the buttons. I am currently like doing an overview on, or like a small little overhaul on the way that we set up these menus and stuff, and we're going to make them more consistent. But what I wanted to focus on is for the academy stuff. We now have like a proper dashboard going on, like latest patch notes. We got like all your instructors coming in. I'm kind of doing like a little bit of a cleanup. And I also added a couple more roadmaps and content within those roadmaps as well. So you can kind of see that I want to give you an idea of what is going to come soon. So anything that's already planned in our back catalog is now going to be visible on the website too. So these are some of the courses that I'm going to be writing about. So shape language, scale and proportions, contrast, visual storytelling. I want to write about all this stuff. And I think, so this is the one that we already have. We have like all this content already. Then we have breaking into games, so like a bunch of stuff about like artists, specializations, different jobs in the games industry, like all that kind of stuff. But the next thing that we're probably going to focus on is one that is here, so diorama creation. So that's the current one that we're focusing on. I haven't added all the lessons here, but I think we're gonna have like another, I don't know, another 15 lessons in this road track. In this roadmap. So yeah, I'm trying to get everything on the website now so that people know what kind of content they can expect. We're currently sitting at like 51 lessons, which is like a healthy amount because the goal is to release in August, right? So we have like a bunch more stuff to write about, a bunch more stuff that's already in the works as well. We've got a bunch of talented people working with us. But yeah, I want to make sure that everything is in like a really good state before we then do our launch. So yeah, every lesson is going to be packed with like a bunch of this awesome content. Oh, I'm so happy with how it's coming together. Like honestly, I'm so excited to get this out there. Long time in the making. But anyway, I just wanted to show off like some of the additional things that we've been doing, and more to come in the future. So all this being said, this is all work in progress, right? Like all the board and disclaimer stuff. We are still like in very active development on this. So yeah, keep that in mind as well. Cool. We'll switch on back for a little bit. I haven't even seen this before. Hype. Hey, nice one. Yeah, I tend to every couple of streams. I tend to like show some of the progression. I think it's like pretty cool. Hello, Hubington. Good to see you. Welcome, welcome. How are you doing? Did I just saying I recommend a crowbar for breaking in? Oh, God. Here I was watching Whip Wednesday until I realized this was live. Yes, we interrupt your regular scheduled Whip Wednesday live stream for another live stream. It's good to see you, Art. Also, I want to make sure that people also get this announcement too. Um, that this this is going to be the second to last portfolio review that we will be doing on YouTube, right? We're doing this big push where we're trying to focus all of our attention on the Discord community, right? So workshops are still gonna be released here, but any live streams like Whip Wednesday and portfolio reviews are both now gonna happen inside of the Discord, where we have more opportunities to actually engage with people that need feedback. So in the future, that's where that will happen. We're gonna make it like really lively inside the Discord. So next week I'll still be here, but the week after I'll be retreating to the safety of the Discord. Um, no, so just as an announcement that well, this is the second to last stream that we'll be doing for portfolio review. So yeah, in August we'll be doing everything inside of the Discord. And then hopefully what my plan is that sort of the YouTube side of things will become like our more high-end kind of polished stuff, you know? I have some content that I want to work on myself. That could be pretty interesting, but yeah. I yeah. I'm looking forward to it, honestly. Like being able to engage with the community, having to talk with them, getting additional context, helping them better. I think that's also going to be like really interesting, like really helpful for both sides as well. And the side is saying, I need to try and remember to check the Discord channels. I find it easier to miss, but hopefully I manage to catch them. Yeah, we will probably have to work on like our announcements and all that kind of stuff, right? So there will be like some supporting stuff happening there too. And then we will see, right? Like we will still be recording it. We will still be making it accessible for people in different time zones and all that kind of stuff. It will just be different to the way that it was before. Because yeah, I think it's time to make some changes, and I honestly really want the focus to be on the Discord. You know, I really love being able to connect with people. I really love to talk with people. I really love to help them directly in where they need to go. And I feel that some of this content seems more exterior focused than interior focused. So that's the thinking behind it. It's time to pivot to hardware. Make a box that just puts out a siren every time you announce anything or go live. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Or so here's the thing. You can, and I've wondered about this, but I'm so afraid. I'm so afraid of testing this. Um, you can actually make a text to speech announcement in Discord, and I have no clue how that's gonna work. My worst case scenario, and I don't think this works like that at all, right? But like I have it in my head that as soon as you make an announcement that's text to speech in an announcement channel, regardless of where you are, if you just have like Discord open, it will just read that announcement in like the lamest AI voice. That's the way that I have it in my head. And then people are just like scrambling of like, oh my god, where's this fucking sound coming from? You know? But yeah, I don't know. Like, I have no idea how that works. But I saw it a couple of times, and I'm like, I don't know. That's pretty weird. I don't want to. I don't want to tempt fate with that. You know. Because sometimes what I'll do is if I'm still working late at night and I'm in like a voice chat with people, right? I will type in text to speech, and it will only play for the people that are in that channel, right? Which makes sense. But still, yeah, it's really weird. So yeah, lots of changes are coming. Just make sure that if you want to catch future streams, next week will be here, but in the beginning of August we will transition to Discord only. Right. What else has been happening actually? Mm, what else has been happening? We talked about like the nice session that we had. We had a really good co-working cafe session. That's what we're calling it now. So every Wednesday we sit down together and we work together. I had a lot of fun. This is gonna sound so silly to say for a lot of people, but I had so much fun, like UVing a bunch of wooden planks. Sounds deranged when you say it out loud, but I really did. I really did. I think it's because like I've spent so much time like working on Beyond Extend stuff, which I also like, but it's still something different to compare to creative work, right? So I do really like that I'm getting back into a routine where I have a dedicated amount of time just to work on personal work. I love it. I love it. And I think also that small amount of time helps me stay focused and hopefully do a big push for the medieval scene that I'm working on. Because yeah, I really want to take that to the next level now. Like in the beginning, I was like, that that project is probably going to be dead. It's never going to see the light of day. Now it's kind of like building up to the point where like, you know, like I kind of feel that it's going into the right direction again. So we'll see. It was 6 hours of locked in productivity. Yeah, yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I think it keeps me accountable as well. So I love sharing my camera and like my screen because there's no way to run. You know, you can't go anywhere. You can't just leave or like I don't know procrastinate. You know, because people are watching now. It's almost like when you say it out loud like that, it feels weird and dystopian and very Big Brother. You know, but let's just ignore that fact. You know, let's just ignore that. Didn't and I have become a bit of accountability buddies, just spamming each other with stuff? Hey, that's also a good method, you know? I think that's also good if you find people that are like in a very similar position and they want to push in like a similar direction, like banding together and having that is a very good way of doing this, right? Um I keep telling it to like all my mentees, right? Like finding accountability is probably the biggest increase in productivity that you can have. And for some people, that means that, you know, you find another person who's in a similar position. Um, or what I did for the longest time was like write a blog post, right? I keep saying this all the time, but like my blog post, I set myself a goal every week, publish a blog post every week, 8 p.m. Wednesday, I think. I can't remember the exact date. But it was this regular event that happened, which made me realize that, oh shit, it's coming up Wednesday again. I need to actually produce some stuff so that I can talk about that stuff and then also do a weekly tip and all that, right? But it gave me that accountability because I know that people were gonna look at it, right? And that was really helpful to me. And I think once you built up that muscle, right, that like recurring event, it becomes a habit over time, and at a certain point it starts to feel weird that you're not doing it, and I think that's really helpful. But yeah, that worked for me. For some people they need an actual person to keep them accountable, but I would actually be curious to hear if people did this, but I've heard recommendations of let's say you want to finish a project and you set yourself a deadline, right? You can kind of keep yourself accountable to that deadline by then giving one of your best friends 50 euros or something like that, right? Or whatever amount that you can think of. And then say to them like, "Hey, I have this deadline. If I don't hit that deadline, you can keep it. You can keep the money. If I hit that deadline, I want you to give the money back." You know? And it's sort of this thing that is now like, "Oh shit, it became real," you know, because there's real money involved with it. But yeah, I'd be curious if people do that or have done it before. Yeah. Anyone in the chat has like any other ways of keeping themselves accountable? Like what works for you? Let me know. I'm always curious to hear about like other people and the way that they keep themselves accountable. So if you have anything that really helps you, feel free to add it to the chat. I'm really keen to hear about it. Um, Dinant is also saying it was nice to see. It was nice to just be able to put stuff in the side chat and get either feedback or just have a bit of fun. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's nice. Whereas during the co-working cafe, like if you just have the chat there, like you can just ignore the chat really easily, right? Whereas if you are in like an actual voice call, I mean, I think, well, especially for me, as soon as people start talking, like I think that in those cases, I'm like a very sociable person and I just want to like engage with the conversation, you know? Um, yeah. And sometimes that is great, and sometimes that's also like very, very bad for productivity. So yeah. So it's good that we have it. It's good that we have it. In the beginning, I do have to say the first session was really weird, not talking to people, but I do like it now. I do like it. Then I'm just saying, spite. Yeah, I mean, uh, that is also a great motivator. What helped me a lot when I was a student is that I would I think it's just jealousy. Let's just call it what it is. I don't think we need to like word it in like a different way. And I still have this, by the way. This hasn't gone away. It's just diminished over time. But what I had is that people around me that were like really good at what they did and they were far ahead of the curve, right? They would publish their work and I would be like, "Dang it, I'm not there yet." And I would just be like jealous of the thing that they would put out, right? And what that usually meant for me was that I had like an initial dip of like, ah, fuck, like I'm not good enough yet, you know. And then over time, I turned that into like, okay, screw that, I'm not good enough yet. I know that I can improve because I have done that in the past. Like, what do I need to improve? And let's just get at it. Let's just get at it 100%, you know? So I always turn that like initial dip of like negative energy into like a battery of just like, yeah, energy that I could sustain myself with for like the next week. Um Again, maybe not the healthiest thing to do. But I can tell you, for me as a student, oh my god, it definitely worked. It definitely worked. And I still have that to this day, by the way. So there are moments where for example, and I hope that she doesn't mind. Lea Kronenberger. So she is the co-organizer. We co-organize an event together with Jasmine Hamzai Fegri and my partner, Tiffany. So whenever Leia puts something out, so I'll show the portfolio, right? So give her a little bit of a shout out, like Leia Kronenberger, like 3D art lead at Frictional Games. I'll share it in the chat as well. Little shout out here. But what I wanted to talk about is she does these collaborations with like Houdini with side effects. So she's worked on like Project Titan. She's worked on like Project Grot. She's done like presentations on like how to make like Houdini work with like stylized environments and all that kind of stuff. And whenever I see her release something like this, oh, I'm just like, dude, I want to do that stuff. You know? Like all my all my what is it? All my normal restrictions or all my what's the word? I'm looking for a specific word. Like all my rationality, all my rational behavior just goes out the window. And I'm just like, dude, I want to do that stuff. Yeah. I think I even mentioned this to her as well, that like I'm always jealous when she comes up with something like this. And it always she doesn't talk about it and then she just drops it and it's just like, oh dude, I want to do this stuff. But no, so I still have those moments where I'm like, dude, this looks insane. It looks awesome. And then she just like keeps experimenting, keeps like pushing herself. It's really inspiring, you know? And I guess that's what I'm getting at. Like there's still that jealousy, but now it's been balanced out by just pure inspiration, right? Like these are people that I'm not really it's not necessarily that I'm jealous of them now as I was a student. It's more that they are like a raw source of inspiration whenever they drop something and I'm like, "Oh my god, that's so awesome." I want to do certain stuff in the same vein. Yeah, really cool stuff. So I just wanted to say that. Just so for people that are wondering, like, hey, is this ever going to go away? Yeah, maybe not, you know? It's healthy as long as you can keep it under control. Otherwise, it becomes envy. Yeah, I. Yeah, maybe that's a good way of putting it. Like in the beginning, when I was a student, you could probably describe it more as envy, especially in that early stage where I was like, shit, I'm not good as them yet, Like then it was like envy. But yeah, no, I think these days what I realize is that they are on their own track and I'm on my own track. And we are sort of doing like very similar things, but we just have different ways of doing them, right? So I'm building an educational company, they're doing a bunch of freelance work. So, of course, the output of their focus is going to be different, right? That makes a lot of sense to me. And the realization that I had is that if I want to do this stuff, if I want to do more of this stuff that, for example, the people that I'm looking at as like source of inspiration, then that would mean that I I would need to give up the stuff that I'm doing, which I'm not which I'm not even considering, right? That would mean giving up Beyond Extend, for example. And that's not where I want to go. So that's an interesting realization that I had over time. Whereas in the beginning, I was almost trying to be another person, where now I'm trying to be myself and double down on that. Even though there are moments where, like sometimes I'll have my doubts about things. Like sometimes I'll have my doubts about like, hey, is like building an educational company like the best thing to do? But I know that that is like inherent to me and that's what I want to do, right? Um so that's why I think that's just like the most inspirational thing, right? Like that you can look at someone else, look at how they're taking their own path in life and how they're dedicating themselves to their craft in their own way, and then seeing that as like a source of inspiration. I don't think envy is that bad if it's indeed under control. Well, yeah, but then then everything that's under control is good, right? But yeah, what if it isn't? That's like usually the place where it becomes like really toxic, right? Um, if it doesn't become negative towards others and yourself, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's one thing that is like really good to realize any sort of from any sort of perspective or any sort of like seniority or wherever you may be in life, you know? And I'm talking very broadly, but like this can happen to you as a beginner or as an intermediate or as an experienced person. Um it's always about learning. And it's always about, hey, you can actually control your actions. And to me, that always meant like, hey, this person is doing fucking awesome stuff. If I want to do that, I can learn how to do that. And now thinking about it, like saying that out loud, they are the perfect person to go ask, right? Um, but yeah, that's what I love about doing art. Is like if you see someone who's doing like the crazy shit that you also want to do, you can get there. It's just about like putting the time, putting in the effort, and just like dedicating yourself to it, right? As they did. And that's the thing that I love about doing something like art. No matter what everyone else is saying out there, art is like very democratic. All as as it always has been. Like you don't need a powerful PC. Like I have like sketchbooks full of just like fucking sketches, right? That's where it started. Sketchbook and a pencil. I have that too, no doubt about it. But I think it's good, meaning you care about this as long as you're doing something. Yeah, 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 yeah. 100%, 100%. And that's what I really love. That's a big realization, right? Is that you're on your own track, and if you keep putting in the work, you keep putting in the time, you're gonna get there. You know. Well, you're gonna get better because getting there sounds like an end destination. I don't think art or the stuff that we do has an end destination. You just get better at it. I'll give you an example. So, I can't remember who specifically it was. I think it was a concept artist. A concept artist that I really looked up to. Well, still look up to, by the way. God, I can't remember their name. It was like an interview that I listened to like a couple of years ago. But one thing that really stuck with me was that they said, "Hey," and this is a person who is in their like late 50s or something like that, right? Like a ton of experience, and they were saying like, "Yeah, I still want to get as good as this person." Right? And that moment, that single sentence, I just knew that this was going to be like a thing forever, you know? There's no end to like getting better. There's no end to the progression. There's no end to like trying to master something, you know? And for a lot of people that might be like daunting, but I think there's a beauty to that too, where you can just like keep getting better at your craft and keep learning more stuff and keep getting better and experiment more, and yeah, there's a beauty to it. Anyway, we're going like very deep philosophical stuff here, but yeah. But I think it's good. We went we went from spite to inspiration, so I think that's a good arc. Honestly, I don't want it to end. Imagine if you're max level, you could learn new things, but I'd rather keep growing. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's the thing. Like it's, I know that sometimes, and we've talked a lot about it. We've talked a lot about like how crazy the industry can be, how tough it is, like how crazy it is to break in, like all that kind of stuff, right? But also, still at the core of it, there's still the beauty of being able to discover something new about yourself and something new that you didn't realize that you could do by pushing yourself to the next level, right? And I think that's so beautiful. I've always said this, right? Like, sure, you're gonna do art and it's gonna be technical and you have to use tools and all that kind of stuff. But I think the biggest learning is not gonna be the tool side, is what you learn about yourself. And yeah, I think that's what I'm really keen on keep doing, you know, like keep growing, like you said, Lily, 100%. You guys saying, yep, never ends. Le passion. Very French. I like it. It all sounds better in French, you know? Yeah, but it is true. It is true. And the the last thing that I'll probably say about this is that, God, I don't want to sound cliche, so I'm not gonna say it like the cliche thing. But you develop new things over time, right? And what I learned about myself, for example, is that I love building things. And for a long time, I thought that was like building environments, but I also love building like a website and a community and people's careers and like all that kind of stuff. I just like being involved with building something up from the ground up, you know? And that can be applied to like so many different things. And that's something that I discovered like over time through art, because art was a way for me to build something, my own world, but then it translated to other things as well. Yeah, really, really interesting. So, yeah, for anyone that's here at the start of their career, you're going to learn so much. Oh my God, I'm excited for you. Yeah. So for people that are jumping in, let us switch this over. We are gonna get started with portfolio reviews in just a second. We are gonna review two portfolios. Let me quickly peek at who we're gonna be talking about today. So we are talking about Andres and Yassin. Both portfolios we're gonna be having a look at. But if you have any questions about environment art, about working in the games industry, anything like that, feel free to share it in the chat, and then let's talk about it, because that's what I'm here to do. And you got to make the most of it. Got to make the most of it. So if there's anything that I can help with, let me know. And we can discuss it in the chat. Anyway, in the meantime, let's move it on to some portfolio views. So a couple of things here. So members can submit their portfolio reviews. You get added to the list at the bottom here. And today we'll be looking at Andres and Yassin, and we're going to be judging them on like 4 different parameters, right? So hireability is your overall just hireability score. Presentation is how you present yourself, your thumbnails, and your work. Artistic skills, pretty self-explanatory, and then you have your technical skills as well. So let's start with Andres Olave. Andres is saying, I do hard surface plus photogrammetry plus plans. That's my current knowledge. Okay. Hard surface, photogrammetry, and plans. Those are already pretty interesting different niches. Interesting. So I'm working on a VSS with a PSO scope. I have no clue what that is. I'm assuming a gun because you mentioned scope. Otherwise, no clue. I'm not a gun guy. For my portfolio, but after that, I don't know what to do. More environments. I'm trying to go sideways because of lack of offers for my role. Right. Okay. So what I'm getting from this already is that there's a little bit of confusion with what's happening with your skill set, right? Because we have foliage, we have hard surface, and we have photogrammetry. Now, how are we gonna push that to something that is a little bit more conducive to hopefully getting a job, right? Because we know that it's like pretty difficult to get a job right now in the games industry. No denying that, but we're gonna see. So yeah, 3D artist, hard surface, photogrammetry, and foliage. Cool, cool, cool. Available for freelance with an email, short and sweet. That's good. Yeah, I would probably give like a little bit more of an introduction here to yourself. Just fleshing it out. I would still say, you could still say, hey, I'm Andres. This is how I got into the industry. Just really short one sentence. And then available for freelance with your Gmail, right? And then have like a bunch of additional things below it, right? Because you still want to be your, I know how important this is for you as a freelancer, that your contact email is above the fold, right? So above the show more. So I would definitely keep that there. And then we can add the rest of the description down. Let's have a look. Available for freelance. Yeah, it's again, like if we look at the summary page here, this is so simple, so straight to the bone that it's just like, okay, give me a little bit more, right? Especially if you don't have a CV here, you're almost giving me nothing to look at, right? I know that you can do, well, you say that you can do photogrammetry, you can do foliage and hard surface. I have not looked at your portfolio yet, right? Those 3 things immediately tell to me that it's a little bit all over the place with what you have done so far, right? That's the initial impression that I'm getting already. So keep that in mind. So yeah, flesh out your summary, especially. Tell us more about it. If you are looking for freelance, especially, that's probably a case where you want to upgrade to pro, have your CV here, try to flesh out your portfolio as if this is like a professional thing, right? Because if I land on your ArtStation and this is all I'm seeing, there's not enough motivation to kind of have me pull the trigger on like hiring you for a freelance gig, right? So try to flesh this out as you can. Fusion by Devoted. Let's see. So that is just the same thing. Is there like anything in here? Share profile. I was wondering if there was anything else where we have like a CV or something like that, but it doesn't look like it. Huh. Okay, interesting. There's also no LinkedIn, right? Like LinkedIn is usually the spot where you can kind of have like a professional CV. So not saying that you have to create one, but then I'm expecting a lot more information on this page, right? So initial remarks here is that you're already like really underselling yourself and how to market yourself to like a company, right? So a lot of stuff already missing here. Let's have a look at your portfolio then. We're going to go by oldest and then go to newest. All vegetation made in speed tree. So this is 3 years ago. This project was made thanks to Michel Girard's amazing Ultimate Forest course. Learn a lot of useful stuff from him. Yeah, so this is already interesting, right? So if you're telling me, hey, I can create foliage for your project, I want you to show me what you created yourself rather than you just showing me, hey, I've made this following a course, right? Because everyone else can just follow a course and kind of put out what we see here. That's not going to be that difficult, right? How do you then stand out as a foliage artist, right? Like really think about that and really try to market yourself as one if that is something that you really want to get a job at, right? Because again, right now it's just like, hey, I've done a course and the course is good as a first step, but then I want to see like how you take those lessons and how you apply them to your own things, right? So already initial impression for specifically, I want to hire you as a photos artist, that's going to be somewhat out of the question because this is very entry level stuff, right? Taking that into account. Let's have a look at the presentation. The presentation itself is again also like pretty basic, right? Like especially these renders, I'm sure that you can do something like way more interesting. Think about like how other people present their like foliage and like try to make it engaging, right? Because this is very, very basic stuff, right? Again, a good starting point, but I want to see people take it further, right? When you're at this stage. Masked outdoor foliage. Yeah, I think a lot of it is also like the presentation itself, right? Like the lighting, the composition of the scene, the presentation itself. We can definitely bring that up to the next level. What I do like is that. Oh wait, I was gonna say what I do like is that you have breakdowns for stuff, right? So that is good. However, default textures from Megascans. Okay, so you're saying that you're saying that you make foliage, but you don't make the foliage yourself, right? You just make the low poly meshes that get the scene. Think about it from like a hireability perspective, right? There's so many other people who can make foliage from scratch if they need to. They can also use photogrammetry. They can also do that kind of stuff. So think about that whenever you're doing or trying to present yourself for any sort of specialization, right? Think about it from a perspective of like, what is like the fullest skill set that I can provide to a company in the hopes that they're going to pick me, right? Because if the only, I'm being very, very black and white here, right? Like if the only thing that you can do is take a pre-existing texture and then build foliage from that, there's a lot of people that can do that, right? So make your own textures, use your own scans and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, textures are from Megascans. You do mention it here. Yeah. So again, that just adds more fuel to the fire in terms of like me not hiring you as a foliage artist because you're not even doing the full pipeline, right? So I know that I'm being very harsh, but this is just like from understanding what people hire you for, right? So to improve this, what you want to do is you want to showcase, hey, I can make the foliage atlases myself. I can then do the cutout. I can then take them into SpeedTree. I can then do the presentation, the optimization, all that kind of stuff. Do the whole pipeline. And then you're going to add value to a person who wants to hire you as a foliage position, right? Cool. Also, what could be interesting, especially for foliage, showing the cluster density, showing the poly count, right, in an actual scenario. Because I know that you're doing this stuff here, but I want to see this in like an actual context scenario where we have a lot of them like come together. Because even if you have a total of like 1,200 tries, right, which I'm assuming is going to be the try count, Yeah, that is going to rack up really quickly with this amount of density. Yeah, that's going to really, really quickly ramp up in just the amount of density that we're going to add and the amount of polys that we have on screen, right? So this is going to be super dense, already throwing up some red flags. And also there's other considerations like alpha overdraw, right? Like the amount of opacity texture that you have on these ferns. If you have them stacked on top of each other, that's going to cause a lot of issues, right? A lot of performance issues. Same thing here. I know that you didn't make this yourself, but you're also throwing away like 50% of your texture, but it just not being used. Not that great. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah, what I want to see here is I want to see the presentation. If you're doing a foliage project next, right? If you were to do that, I want to see a level of the presentation and then also think about the context of what is going to be important of foliage in like a real-time environment, right? Especially the poly count, the density, and also the opacity of the textures too. What is also always interesting to look at when it comes to foliage is just how the readability differs from, let's say, you look at something up close to something that looks far away, right? I know we're diving into the weeds of things, kind of pun not intended, but like these areas, for example, they're so noisy because it is literally just like a bunch of like very tiny things, just like flashing for your attention, right? So this is like super noisy. And from like a perspective as an environment artist, that is the stuff that you want to adjust, right? Also, another thing, last thing that I'll mention about the foliage is that everything is at the same scale. Everything is super uniform. Like if you look at nature and look at how these things populate in real life and try to replicate that, right? That's also another thing where you can showcase your prowess as a foliage artist, where you can say like, hey, I do not only know how to make the trees and the plants and all that kind of stuff, but I also know how they would be scattered in real life and showcasing how, for example, ferns probably don't like to be out in the open, right? That's why you see them under canopies of trees and all that kind of stuff. So looking at something like this as a foliage artist is immediately going to cause some red flags because, yeah, that's not where they grow, right? I know, super in-depth stuff, but that's the sort of things that you need to look at as a foliage artist, right? Cool. Okay, we talked about the foliage well enough. Now we're going to go into your hard surface projects. Yeah, dense. Density. Yeah, that's a lot of polys for something like this, right? But you do have a breakdown. You do have a wireframe, which I really appreciate. I do like the presentation, even though there's a lot of renders here. I think honestly, condensing things down and just saying like, hey, I have my one main render, which is the best out of all of these. And then maybe have like 2 or 3 detail shots, right? Where you have like these openings in like nice presentations. That looks nice. And then you just have your breakdowns, right? Because this is a lot of stuff that is basically just showcasing like relatively similar things, right? So always try to condense it down to a couple of screenshots that show like the most interesting visual stuff, right? See, got the battery packs as well. Yeah, I wish I could see like more breakdowns. We have like the UVs, we have the wireframes, but the wireframes are not showing the whole model. I'm also not seeing the textures themselves, right? Which is also like pretty interesting. I also don't know how you used your 2 UVs because I don't know what this is supposed to be, right? So I don't really get how you split up your texture into like 2 UVs. So those are all things to think about, right? Like take a step back, try to imagine yourself as never ever seeing this before, and then think about like, hey, does this make sense? Like, does this make sense from like looking at looking at it from like a third person view. Right. Yeah, I can't really talk too much about the texturing, right? Like I'm not a prop artist myself. Um, but what I will say is that this is like from like a complexity perspective, this is a relatively simple prop. And that has weight, as in if you want to be a good hard surface prop artist, right? I think where you are going to get a lot of success is if you showcase that you can do really complex assets, right? So that's going to be the power to set yourself apart from anyone else. Or also just have some visually interesting stuff happening in your portfolio, right? So let me showcase like my buddy Will. So if you're looking at some of his hard surface stuff, right? Like this is like really old at this point, but it's just like it showcases fun. This is so ridiculous, but the presentation is top notch. And it looks just like a fun little project. It looks crazy. And then even if you look at like the most recent work, right? Look at how this stuff is presented, right? Really nicely presented. And the main thing here is that there's a story behind it, right? There's a story that you can kind of insinuate by like just what's happening on the screen, right? And I think that's like super interesting. And then really clean breakdowns as well. Yeah, really nice stuff. And then taking into account that like Will is like a lead prop artist, right? He doesn't really need to do breakdowns anymore. But it's still really nice to see that he does. He does do them. So just a couple of examples on how to present your work. And if you want to get your work seen from like a game art perspective, we need to get closer to game art, right? Which means just infuse story, infuse context, like make it feel like I'm actually looking at a weapon that is inside of a game rather than something that is more akin to product visualization or something like that, right? So, yeah, think about the game context. Cool. Collection of scans with photogrammetry. You did that for an internship, which is cool. Yeah. With stuff like this, I think it is cool that you're showing off photogrammetry, and it's almost like you're adding like a little checkbox to your to your CV, right? What I'm really missing is you showcasing what you've learned or how you've approached it, or like give me something more than just like, oh yeah, here's the meshes, like yeah, here's the raw renders, and then here's the final meshes. You get what I'm saying? Like you can make this super interesting by talking about how you've done something. Let me see. Let me bring up an example. I've I found this like a really interesting example. This is from like a student that we then hired to work for us at Ubisoft, right? And look at this. Like this was an interesting project where he took photogrammetry. But the way that he did it is he captured photogrammetry by going into Horizon Zero Dawn, taking a bunch of screenshots, then throwing that into photogrammetry, then extracting the mesh from that to use as a base mesh, and then build stuff on top of it with like his modeling software, right? But it's really cool to see the workflow and what he had to do to get there and some of the common issues and how he fixed those issues, right? Super interesting to look at this stuff. And for sure, he went more technical than you're probably going to go for, right? But if you can explain to me, like, hey, look, this is like the raw scan setup. This is what they looked like. This is how many pictures I took. This is a setup in reality capture. This is how I cleaned it all up. Like, you can do a lot of really cool stuff with this. Like, just showcasing from the perspective of, hey, this is what I've done, not only like, hey, this is the end result, you know? Cool. So a bunch of stuff that you can do in here, like explaining the progress or the process, right? And showcase what is the raw poly count. You know, there's no breakdowns here. There's no final game art stuff that I can look at. So honestly, what you're showcasing me is just like, hey, here's a bunch of skulls that I scanned. And that feels really lazy, doesn't it? It just feels like, oh yeah, I kind of did this thing. Here it is. That's not the feeling that you want to evoke with your portfolio, you know? Cool. We're gonna keep going. More hard surface stuff. And I say that not in a bad thing. I think hard surfaces seems to be your niche, right? Um, my submission to the Warpups Discord server. Warpups. I have not heard about that. Interesting. Cool. Very interesting final results. I have all the interesting stuff that I want to know about, all the breakdowns completely gone. Again, showcase how you've done stuff, right? Because there's no wireframe, there's no texture breakdown, there's no texel density, there's nothing here. Which is a shame, right? You're making game art, but you're not showing game art. So, yeah. I know that I'm repeating myself over and over, right? But it is really, really important. In terms of presentation, I think you're doing a good job, right? Like the presentation itself looks really nice. It's nicely lit. It's nicely rendered. No issues with that. You're trying to incorporate it into a scene. That's pretty good. I would still say that it's, in terms of like incorporating it into the scene, this feels like, oops, I just dropped my very clean like laser attachment or whatever this is on like like an abandoned floor, you know? Those two elements feel super disconnected. So if you are adding it in context, make sure that the context matches your texturing style, right? Or adjust your texturing to the context where we see this in. What would be sick is that you do a second texture where it is just like, you know, like some of these things are uncapped, a lot of scratches, a lot of dirt, and it's covered in dust, right? That could be cool for like an additional shot. Right now, it just feels like, you know, this is like a setup kind of thing. Got the team challenges. Oh, do I see breakdowns? Oh my god. Let's have a look. I focus specifically on the vegetation, creating mushrooms, vines, roots, and other plants. Okay. This stuff is cool, right? Like, this stuff is cool. This is going in the right direction. What I would say, again, game art, right? Show me how you've done that. Let's see. Photometric stereo capture. You're saying it in one sentence. This is where the juice is. This is where the juice is. Show me how you've done this, right? Like show the raw setup, how you've scanned the data, like how you've adjusted the data. There's cool stuff happening here. Showcase it. You're underselling yourself at this point. And then we have the mailbox for an artist. I already had a quick peek at this. This is good, right? Like clean wireframes. I can see the UVs as well, nicely laid out. The other thing that I would say is that I would still love to see the textures, right? Like individual texture breakdown, what the resolution is, what the poly count is. I think those things are still missing. But this final project that you did last month for an artist, so I'm expecting that this is probably going to be the shortest amount of time that you spent on any project you've done before, right? This probably holds the most value as a game artist. And I really want to emphasize that point, right? That you can work your ass off on something that's like really long and really in depth and all that kind of stuff. But if you don't sell it, if you don't break it down, if you don't tell me how you've done it, then for a recruiter, there is almost no value to it, right? Because you're just showing me pretty pictures, but you're not showing me any game art. And I think therein lies, in large part, why you might be struggling to also get a job, especially within like a game art context, right? Because you're not really showing game art stuff. So I wish there was a kinder way to say this, but that is the way, that is the thing that you need to show off if you want to get into games, right? Like if you want a person to hire you for making game art stuff, I want to see you make game art stuff. That's what it comes down to. So, what do we talk about? So, let's do a quick recap here. So, it's interesting. So, the foliage has value, but I want to see you do the full pipeline, right? So, in terms of the foliage, if we focus on foliage specifically, let me actually grab my pen. Let's make some notes here. In the meantime, hello Makefal, hello Mohammed, good to see you both. Just as a reminder, we're going to be wrapping this one portfolio up in just a second. If you have any questions, feel free to ask questions, or if you want to add your own comments, that's fine too. And here you go. I just forgot to share Andres' ArtStation. So yeah, feel free to go check how this works. So what I was going to say. Oh, Eisendrag is coming in. It's Yassin. Hello, Yassin. We're going to be talking about your portfolio next in a second, buddy. Looking forward to it. Right. So foliage specifically, right? If you focus on the foliage, this is still a good let me see. This is still a good starting point, right? You using a course as a starting point is great. Not necessarily anything wrong with that. But that is exactly what it is. It is a starting point. You then applying those skills in the team challenge is a great evolution of that, right? What I am missing is game art. Like, show me how you've done it. Show me how you created like everything that has to do with foliage, right? So, yeah, show more foliage. Not show more foliage. Show more game art related things, right? Same thing happens to both of these, right? Really nice product rendering, but not game art. I want to see more game art stuff. I think the older one is actually better because we have wireframes, we had a couple of breakdowns in there. That's good. Keep on building on that, right? But something like this almost has like, it has like negligible value to get you into this industry, because I can see pretty pictures, but if I don't know, for all we know, what could happen is that you used 128K texture and I don't know 14,000 UDIMs. I'm being ridiculous here, right? But and like 1 million polygons, right? So this is not game ready. But if you don't show that, like I don't know, you know? So from a risk perspective, I'm trying to be really clear here, right? Like from a risk perspective, it is way more risky to hire you because there's a bunch of unknowns compared to a person who does do breakdowns, and I can actually see what is happening. So yeah, these two are product renderings. So add game art. This one is not showing off how you've done it, so there's like missed opportunities there too. These last two things, they have some value in it. The last one actually in presentation and production and all that is looking quite nice. We talked about some missing game art stuff there too. But yeah, that's the way that I kind of look at it now, that the last two pieces hold the most value. And the team challenge specifically holds the most value just because it showcases that you can work within a team, you can use source control and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's where the majority of the value comes from in that. So that means in general, if I want to hire you again as a freelancer, you're not making it easy for me, because most of my judgment has to come from this single project, which is dangerous, right? We don't want to be in that position because the rest of it just barely shows any game art. Cool. Okay. Let's go back, Andres. So hireability is going to be pretty low. See my latest comments, right? presentation is actually like really good, right? Like the way that you present your work, the way that you do your renders. Sure, there were some things that I could say about storytelling and blah 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 blah, but the actual presentation of it, the way that it's lit, the way that it's composed, it is interesting to look at. I think you're doing a good job there. But it is just in the other cases where it's really hard for me to judge your artistic and technical abilities because there's just nothing for me to really grasp onto, you know? I can sort of see that you know how to optimize an asset, right? So that's what I'm seeing here. I can sort of get an idea of your UVs as well, but I'm still lacking, texture breakdowns. You say like a 2K texture with like a 1K texel density, 8K tries. Also, a slight note here, you're adding it here, add that to the image because I nearly missed this happening, right? So add that to the image and then use your description as like additional information for should people need it. Um, yeah, cool. So let's go back. So So yeah, I want to circle back to something that you said in the beginning, right? Especially focusing on the last part here. I'm trying to go sideways because my lack of offers for my role. First question that I have to ask here is I am not sure what your role is currently. Does that make sense? So that's already struggle point number 1. So what I would say, based on your portfolio, now that we had a look at everything, right, is that you seem to really like hard surface prop creation, right? So that is good. That's where I'm leading towards because foliage is probably not going to happen because this is just a course that you followed, which is, again, it's fine. That's a good starting point, but I want to see you do your stuff on top of it, right? And for photogrammetry, you're just doing this, but you're not showing any sort of workflow. So the only thing that I can really lean on is hard surface stuff here, right? So let's stick to the hard surface elements at this point. Even if we do that, then we're missing breakdowns on both of these. I mean, there's a little bit in this one, but again, we can only focus on this one, right? So I don't think that like going sideways is going to solve the issues that you currently have. The issues that you're currently having is that you're not showing game art when you're trying to go for a game art portfolio, right? That is the first big issue. Try to make things that are applicable to games and show how you've made them applicable to games, right? Um, and that is on top of you showcasing that like you have difficult like different things, but none of them really shine as a game art at the moment, right? So first thing is I'm unsure about what your role is at the moment. Probably leaning towards hard surface. And that's with like a little question mark between brackets, right? Um there's a lot of game art that's missing currently. Especially when looking for game art roles. And that's again like if you then go sideways and let's say, I'm not getting any luck with doing all the stuff that I've done. I'm gonna make an environment. If you are gonna approach your environments in the same way that you're doing your props and all that kind of stuff, you're gonna run into the same issue because again, it's game art stuff, right? Like make it game art related. Um, I would say from just the look that I get from your portfolio, I would recommend to double down on hard surface and then see what you can add on top of it, right? So lean on your skills as hard surface. So let me already write that down. Lean on your hard surface skills and then build additional skills around it. So what that means is, for example, let's say you have something like this, right? Like this, the presentation. Instead of just putting it on the floor, give me something that could be contextual to a game. For example, the beginnings of a workbench in The Last of Us or in like any FPS game, right? This could be the hero prop of that workbench, and you're showcasing to me that it's like in like game art context. You don't need to build all that stuff yourself. You can kind of build it over time if that's what you want to do. But that could be really cool in terms of like showcasing how you can build something for a game, right? So that's what I mean. You take your hard surface skills, you lean on them as much as you can, and then you slowly over time expand to, let's say, learning about like trim sheets or learning about tileable textures or those other things, right? Um, so yeah, that would be a good example of that. And that's probably a good way that you can build additional skills on top of the skill set that you already have, right? So we're not going sideways. We are just building up on the skill set that you already have. What I commonly refer to is like a T-shaped, like sort of like a T-shaped skill set, right? So think about this like this is like your inverse T. This, in your case, is let's say hard surface, right? That's what you're already pretty good at. So we're going to keep building on that, but then we're going to add like additional skills like next to it, like trim sheets and tileables and all that kind of stuff. And we're going to build out, well, in this case, in this context, sideways. But we need to keep in mind that the main skill is still going to be your hard surface skills, right? So that would be my recommendation here. Cool. Because first of all, maybe to round this off, lack of offers on your role again it comes down to you not proposing to me that you can even do game art, right? And also the industry is tough out there now for anything that you want to go into. And I think the way that you stand out, especially as a prop artist, is by doing more complex things and more relatable game art stuff, right? So yeah, hope that makes sense, and keep it up, Andres. But yeah, lots of work on the table, lots of work to do. But thank you for sharing your portfolio. I think the submission is broken again. Oh no. God damn it. Let's see. In the meantime, any questions in the chat? Any questions in the chat about any of this? Maybe you struggle with some of the similar things yourself. Feel free to comment or bring it up. McFall is asking a weird question. Tim, in your experience, can I trust Deutsche Bahn to bring me to Cologne without massive delays? In my case, I've always had really good experiences with Deutsche Bahn. I think honestly, wherever you have like public trains and like public transport, there's probably going to be people complaining about it. I know there's like a bunch of like complaints about DB specifically. I travel with them like quite often, and sure, there have been some delays, but not to the point where I would be like, oh my god, I'm gonna look for alternatives, you know? I don't know if that's a good answer. But yeah, hopefully. Yassin is throwing in some additional context, so Yassin is shaking in his boots. You don't have to be worried about that, mate. Let me share your portfolio already as we get started on it in just a bit. But you're saying, throwing over some context about my portfolio, only really have done environment art since last August, and I spent my years in uni doing characters, so new ground. A big chunk of my work is under NDA too. Nice. Okay. The good thing about that is that you have like a bunch of stuff coming up then, right? What it sounds like. Surely it can't be too bad going back to DB. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, if you talk to people, there's probably going to be people across the space with like horror stories, but yeah, I don't know. It's getting kind of hot in here. Let's blast some cold air. Oh, but yeah, in that case, we can have a look. Yassin. Yeah, I don't think the NDA work will come anytime soon. I doubt the game will see it launched, unfortunately. The NDA game. Welcome to the games industry. I have two things that I worked on for quite a while that will never see the light of day, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I know what it is. So yeah, that sucks. And that's why, a reminder to everyone, that's why portfolio work, like personal work especially, is always going to be important. If you think, this sounds like such a I don't know, gatekeeper statement, I guess. But like if you think that like the work is over when you get into the games industry, oh boy. Do I have some news for you? That's when we're just getting started. Yeah, because I will say, like, without my personal work, like in the first couple of years, I would probably not have been able to make the moves that I would have made if I just wouldn't do them. So yeah, personal work, your portfolio is always going to be key. Yeah, that sucks to hear, regardless, though. Just the yeah, the state with NDAs and like, especially for games that get canceled, and there's a lot of games that are getting canceled these days. Jesus Christ, so many people are gonna struggle with it. I wish there was like a different system, you know? Like I saw some people suggest this where it would be nice that if your game, let's say your game doesn't get shipped for whatever reason, right? And like the company just completely scraps it off the table, then it would be nice that you can at least release the work that you've done on it. There's obvious issues with that too, because most of the time, whenever you're working on like a game in progress, for a long time your work just doesn't look good enough. Like honestly. So I don't know if that's going to be the boon that a lot of people want it to be. But I can imagine that if you work on a game that's like 90% done, and then it's just like, well, sorry guys, change of plans. It's just going to scrap it. Yeah, just release it at that point. Come on. I think what was that, like Project Dragon or something like that? It was like an indie game that was like pretty far along in its development. They had like even like a demo. Oh, Lily's saying the same thing. Um It depends. Project Dragon looked amazing, even though the project got canceled. Yeah. So that's like the example that I was going to bring up, right? Where if you look at the work done on that, that was looking really great. Um, so there was like a lot of visual benefit from having that on your portfolio, right? But that's also, I guess, more of an indie title, so there's more leniency on that. Um, because it is one thing like making a game pretty, and it's another thing to make a game that is pretty and also is playable, you know? And I will say, from like all the productions that I've been in, like the issue the issue has never really been art. Really. If you think about art, most of the time, for any game that you can think of, the art is usually like really, really well done, right? Most of the time it comes the reason why projects don't do well is just from like a gameplay perspective, right? Like a playability, gameplay, design, all that kind of stuff, where like most of the time like games look freaking awesome these days. um why is it not allowed though if the game is not going to be seen by gamers anyway? At least artists can show their work. Well, so I can make a couple of assumptions as to why, when a game is under NDA and they canceled it, it is still their property, right? So let's say you work at a company and a company decides to scrap your project. They will still want to keep all that IP, like that intellectual property, within their studio, just in the case that they're going to spin it back up again in the future, right? Because let's say you have a really innovative project, right? You just didn't manage to get it over the finish line. Um, if you then start sharing like your IP that is related to that game, another company might see that and be like, "That's cool. We can learn from that, you know? Like we can borrow some ideas from that." That might be the case. I think that's the major case that I'll make against why you wouldn't do it, right? And that is without even thinking about the caveat that, like, especially at a AAA level, have fun just trying to steal an idea from like another company, right? Without having like deep, deep, deep pockets. Because even let's say I don't know, like let's think about any big IP. Let's say like the next Assassin's Creed get canceled, you know, and then they release like all their work that they've done on it. Another company, even if it's like a really innovative like Assassin's Creed and it was going to be like the best thing ever, another company is not going to have a good time trying to replicate that, right? So that idea only works up until a certain point because it becomes prohibitively expensive to then take that gamble yourself. So yeah, I don't know. That's the only way that I can kind of look at it, because if you look at it from like a consolidation perspective, right? Like an industry consolidation perspective, a lot of it has to do with IP, right? So let's say a bigger company buys up your company. Now they own the IPs. They can basically shut down your company, even though you've made those IPs. They can go and, they have control over what to do with the company. They can basically um, kill that company if they wanted to, but they still have the rights to the IP, right? I mean, depending on legal frameworks and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of caveats there, right? But in the simple way, that's a way to look at it. And that IP has a lot of value, right? We're seeing the same thing with, for example, Ubisoft, right? Like they're doing this split into like it's not going to be one Ubisoft, it's going to be five creative houses. Most of that movement is because of IP. The reason why they got like the new deal with Tencent in like the first creative house was because it had like the big IPs in it, right? So yeah, I don't know, just a couple of thoughts there. I would love, God, yeah. I mean, there's it's a rabbit hole, right? Because even if you speak about like NDAs, there's so many people that have worked on finished games that can't even show what they've done on it. That's also a thing. So yeah, it's not even canceled games. It's not even, yeah, it's not even those games. Like what what if you leave a company before the game ships, right? Like look at the situation that I'm in, for example. Um like you need to kind of keep in contact with people there so that you can get access to renders or any sort of media content that will be shipped with the final game so that you can then put that on your portfolio, right? Because there is still a selection process that happens with, let's say, ArtStation drops, right? So yeah, it is a very complex thing. Very complex thing. And I wish it was easier. But no, everything in games is super complex because it's billions, billions of dollarinos. Yeah, but it's a good question. It's a good question. A lot of people are asking that question, and especially artists or people that have their work under NDA that are struggling to find a job right now. Some of the reasons are because like most of the stuff that they've done in the past 5 years is just not available, right? They can't show it. Just walk around in Fable and screenshot your work and post it. Probably can't do that. No, probably can't do that. So usually what happens when you release a game and you will do an art drop, right? Those art drops are very selective and very specific in what they show and how they show it. So, for example, when we shipped Far Cry 6, we could basically go into the game, we could take screenshots that we wanted, and um, we could then send them for approval, right? So there was still a selection process where the art director behind the game, he sat down for like a week straight or something like that. I can't remember the time, where he was just looking at like all the submissions and approving every individual picture so that it was all just like managed, right? Because for them, an ArtStation Blast, for example, is a huge marketing thing, right? It's a huge marketing thing. So there's a lot of restrictions even in that. Plus, also you can put on all the bells and whistles. When you have like the in-engine tools, it always looks better. You can kind of turn off like all your LODs and all that kind of stuff, make everything look crisp. Ah, nice. Yeah, I wish it was as easy, but unfortunately, it is not. Right. Enough yapping. Let's switch it on over to some more portfolio reviews. We're going to be talking about Yassin's work. Yassin, let me see. Let me refresh here. Did I do it already? Yeah, I did it. Refresh again. There we go. That's good. Okay. So, Yassin is saying, I want to work in a AAA game studio that has a focus on grounded realism or sci-fi realism. Okay. Grounded realism or sci-fi realism. Interesting. Be curious to know what sci-fi realism is. Like something like Star Citizen? Because what other sci-fi realism game do you have these days? I'm so out of the loop with any sci-fi game. Yeah. What are some like what would you describe, like anyone in the chat, what would you describe as like a sci-fi realistic game? I'm curious. Starfield? Yeah, Starfield. Is that sci-fi realism? Yeah, so here's the thing. Like I don't know. Like I feel like Star Citizen is hmm. Now that I say this out loud, maybe it's not realistic as I have it in my head. Because, for example, Starfield to me feels more fantasy, right? Fantasy? Alien Isolation? Yeah. Yeah, what am I kind of latching onto, right? Because anything that is going to be sci-fi is going to be sort of fantasy anyway, right? Because it's not current tech. So that's dumb. I guess what I um sci-fi doesn't have to be space. Oh my god, Yasin, you're making it so much more complex than it already is. I can't wrap my head around like this one thing already. Now you're making it even more complex. What are you doing to me? The Horizon games, arguably. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I guess I was just overthinking it. So like any sci-fi game, really. Because so my first thought, just to give you some context, was what's that series called again? Oh dang it, I got the books. The Expanse. That was like my interpretation of sci-fi realism, where everything is grounded in realism, right? So anything is like sort of physically accurate and all that kind of stuff. And if you then start thinking about like let's say Starfield, it's just like, oh no, it's just fun. It doesn't have to be physically accurate. It's just like fun. You make like crazy ships and all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, I don't know. Okay, it gives us some interesting context. So, what do we learn from that? So, grounded realism or sci-fi realism? So, yeah, realistic art styles, trying to go for as detailed as possible, I would say, right? Let's start with first impressions here. So, environment artists focused on creating realistic worlds through terrain generation, environment production, asset creation, and real-time workflows. Currently working on large scale environments using. Oh, that's a lie. Oh well, maybe this is your production work, right? Like your NDA work. So maybe that's true. But I know what you're working on, and it's definitely not large scale. Maybe this is you trying to like push me into like making an open world again. You know, like no. Let's see. So using Unreal Engine 5, Gaia, and industry standard art pipelines, my work spans terrain generation, modular environment construction, material creation, lighting optimization, and visual storytelling. I enjoy tackling projects that combine technical problem solving with artistic world building, with particular interest in realistic and immersive. Okay, so we are we are tripling up on the same information here, right? I think that you can literally remove these two paragraphs and everything is still going to be relevant in here, right? I would say, especially in an age where like everyone's like using like AI to write descriptions, right? I don't have a qualm with like AI specific stuff. Well, let me describe what I'm going to say here. Um, I think it is good to use it as a base to kind of solidify your sentence structure and to kind of get a feel for like what the keywords are. What I then want you to do is try and like add some personality back into the mix, right? Like what makes you unique? What makes you stand out? Because this sounds like you're hitting a bunch of keywords, but you're not really telling me a whole lot about like you personally, if you get what I mean. So the tools can also be removed because you literally kind of mentioned some of that stuff here, right? So you can merge the tools in the first paragraph, and that has everything that you have. And then you can just add like this paragraph here. It's just open to environment art dispositions. Yeah, within games, real time visualization and cinematic production. That's fine, I guess. Yeah, open to anything. Cool. So we can shorten this down, and that's gonna be good. Let's see. Environment artist had tech amulets. Environment and vegetation artist for large scale landscapes. Nice. That's what you were working on for this year then. That's good. I saw that you also have like a LinkedIn page. Let's check that out really quickly. So you got a CV. Interesting. Let's open that one up already. SAE in the UAE. I didn't even know that they had a branch over there. That's cool. That is cool. Open to work in the US, Germany, Poland, France, Canada. That's interesting. That spans a whole lot of locations in the globe. I'm just wondering, since you're in the chat, do you have all the required like boring paperwork to actually work in those countries? Because if so, that's awesome. That is awesome that you have those options available to you. Let's see. Let's have a quick look at the CV as well. Oh, it just didn't open as a new tab. Let's have a look. I don't. You need sponsorship for all of them. Oh, okay. So in that case, hmm. Yeah, how do we want to approach this? Yeah, because my immediate assumption was, and we've never actually looked at this in detail, right? Is that my assumption is that if you tag yourself as on site, I'm assuming that you're available in those locations. Um, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. Hmm. Yeah, I'm based in Egypt, and GCC. What is GCC? So no real industry here. GCC. I'm trying to think. I always sucked at like geography, so I apologize. um, Gulf countries. Oh, okay, okay. I didn't know that was like the shorthand for it. It's good to know. Qatar, UAE, Saudi. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Nice one. Okay, so let's yeah, in terms of like the location, I think that's okay to keep on there, right? Yeah. I guess people are gonna look at your CV, and then I'm assuming, yeah, you have like Qatar here anyway, right? So people are gonna assume that if you have your on-site locations, that you need sponsorships, right? That's all good. Um, I'm gonna ask a question to the chat here. Has anyone found a good way of presenting your portfolio, your CV, in a PDF format on LinkedIn? Because I love that you added like these interactable links, but obviously this is a PNG, so they're not clickable. I wonder if anyone in the chat has found a workaround or knows how to present it otherwise. Because that's one thing that I would be curious to know about. Cool. This is pretty much similar to your LinkedIn, nice and clean. I like it. One thing, this depends on your personal preference. I don't tend to add my phone number. Um, oh yeah, yeah. Like I know that it's a PDF, right? But like LinkedIn just smashes it and makes it like a um smashes it into like a JPEG or a PNG, whatever it does, right? Which is like super annoying. So yeah, it's not a user error. It's like a platform thing. So I wonder if people have found like any sort of yeah workaround for that. Um, my main thing here with the phone number is that I generally wouldn't put a like wouldn't recommend putting like a phone number on your CV because it's public information and you never know who's going to do something with that, right? With your Gmail account or with your email account, that's like less intrusive, right? So this is more up for like personal, yeah, personal, yeah, how you personally feel about that. I will say that in the grand scheme of things, I think a lot of people will just prefer email anyway, rather than using your phone number. I would say, in general. I would love to talk to a recruiter about this, what they prefer. But anyway, the rest of it looks nice and clean, nicely laid out. I love it. The same thing that conceptual vision is saying. I love how clean your CV is, though. Very readable. It is very clean. What I like about it is also there's a good structure in the sense of you have bold taglines for summary, experience, software skills. Then you have a second line in bold where it highlights what you've done, and then it kind of goes into like smaller things, right? Makes there's a hierarchy to your CV. So really, really well done, really readable. So great stuff. Yeah, cool man. Nice way of presenting yourself and your CV. That's already a great start. Love to see it. Um, cool. Let's have a look at the portfolio then. Let's start with the old stuff. I mean, old stuff. It's 6 months old. That's not that old. You added some context here, right? So you've only done environment art since last August. Cool. Since last August. So I guess all you're seeing on the portfolio is just like environment art stuff, right? It's good. Height map, snow mask, nice little presentation. Oh no. The bane of my existence. Unreadable graphs. It's a small thing. Don't put like a graph on your portfolio if you can't read it. Um, I think that there might be a way to like clean this up. Like maybe you kind of cut it in like separate sections, and then you have like a high resolution version of this or something like that. Um, I don't tend I don't tend to put a lot of stock into like how you've done it. Well, okay, let me be specific with this. I I put a lot of stock into like how you've done it if you showcase it in like an intriguing way, right? For example, a way to showcase this is go through all the nodes, take a screenshot of everything, then throw it into like an online GIF maker. There's like, I don't know, Tiny GIF or something like that. Like Easy GIF is like an online platform. You can just throw in a bunch of images. It makes a GIF for you, really easy. And then you can just use that as like a way to showcase, like, hey, this is the shapes that I started with, and this is how I developed them over time, right? I think that's a more interesting way of showcasing how you've built something up so that we can see the progression of something, right? Way more engaging. Same thing here. I think this is less relevant to anything game art because you're presenting this in Blender, right? I would still prefer to see this um, in Unreal, right? Using real-time workflows, make sure that everything is going towards like a real-time engine and focus your attention on getting something to run in real time rather than offline rendering in Blender, right? Different render engines, different restrictions, and different ways of like working with it. But cool stuff though. Like I do like the presentation. I like the clean presentation here. Another side note here, this is going to be a short video anyway. Try to always have these as autoplay videos, right? So that if I land on your portfolio, autoplays immediately, nice and clean. I don't have to wait for anything. It's cool stuff. If you need to downscale or like optimize or compress like any of your videos, use Handbrake. Handbrake is a fantastic tool to like really shrink down your file sizes. And it's really lightweight as well. Cool. Yeah. What I would say, this is where it gets interesting, right? Because this is mostly Blender stuff. If you're doing a presentation in Unreal for this, I want to see like all the individual texture maps and like all the resolutions of everything, right? And then also how you set up the terrain shader with all the layers. That would be cool to see. The Last of Us. Uh-oh, you're using a logo, and then you're not calling out that it's fan art. You do say non-official here, right? What I would do, just in terms of the sake of clarity, is you have the Last of Us logo here. Beneath it, just say fan art, right? Immediately put it in the same spot. No confusion whatsoever, and I don't have to like look around on the frame. So yeah, try to do that. Make sure that it always looks like 100% readable that you are doing fan art for something. Project is a vertical slice also of a suburban environment inspired by Grounded. Um, oh, I read that as like the name of a game. By grounded narrative-driven games such as The Last of Us. Yep, that's cool. The focus of the team was to explore modular environment design, environmental storytelling, and realistic material breakup while keeping the scope production friendly. That's good. You're making a vertical slice. I like that. The main issue that I have is that it's just you're showing the final results, but then you're not showcasing like all the game art stuff, right? So that's what I would focus on in the future is really go into detail as in like how did you make the materials and all that kind of stuff, right? Like show all the goodies behind it. Let's see. Yeah. And again, working towards Unreal, right? I know that you're doing all this stuff now. Makes a lot of sense. This was my first environment. This is a great first environment, right? A really good way to get like your feet wet, so to say, right? Um, yeah, I'm curious to see what you're gonna be. Well, I'm curious to see what you're building now and how that's gonna look at the end because what I'm seeing now is gonna be really really nice. Just for the context that people have here, so Yassin is one of our early adopters currently going through like the academy stuff and is doing like amazing work. So shout out to Yassin for doing awesome stuff. And I can't wait for you to show it. Okay, cool. So for future projects, you already know this, right? Like Unreal Engine, do the breakdowns, showcase how you texture things. Um, yeah. So not really that much value here in terms of like game art, right? But we'll continue going on. Hey, this is where we go into Unreal. That's awesome. I think it's maybe much more reader friendly to have space between so much text. Yeah, the annoying thing with text on ArtStation is that you can't add space, which is really annoying. They stop you from adding like indents and stuff. So let's say if you wanted to add space between these paragraphs, you need to start with like points. So like making a new line, adding a point, making a new line. It's super annoying. Or like work with like I don't know lines or something like that. But yeah, I would say to your point though, it is a lot of text, and usually this stuff in here, I would always try to instead of explaining it, making it visual is always going to be a better way of presenting your work, right? So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. The scene is framed from a low grounded perspective, sunken into a tall uncut grass. Yeah, so sort of stuff like this, like the composition guides the viewer from an intimate foreground to a broad atmospheric landscape. But this is almost like, well, we're looking at it, right? And if I'm not seeing this, or if you're not creating this through your visuals, I don't mind. Well, I don't really care if you explain it, if I don't feel it. So this is one of those cases where, let the scene do the talking. And you can just say like, hey, this is a real-time environment created in Unreal using Lumen, inspired by the quiet scale of European grasslands. Maybe this is where you can be more specific. Like Europe. Well, I mean, like any text, not any text, but like any sort of continent has like such a wide range of like different landscapes, right? So let's say France is going to look different compared to Norway, right? So maybe you can make it a bit more specific, maybe. No, Gnome or No Me is saying seems like the text is from AI. Um, I don't think it necessarily is from AI. I think it's just like really generic. You know, that's usually a good thing. It's very, and this is, don't get me wrong, this is the way that I tend to write a bunch of stuff as well, because I am not a creative writer. I will just state matter of fact things. This is how I've done it. This is a project thing. This is the tools that I used. This is the lighting setup. Like that is just the way that I kind of write. Um so yeah, it is in fact AI. No, busted. I wrote it out myself and then had AI make it recruiter friendly. Yeah, so what I would do and I don't really mind making it like using AI in the process here to make like a description, right? I think it's a tool. In this case, you can use it. What I would do is I would use it the other way around. So use it maybe for initial input and say like, hey, here's what I've done. Write like a description, and then you take that and then you make it more you, right? Because the issue with AI is that everyone is using it. So a lot of people's descriptions are just like reading like really boring. So I am actually we went through to a time where like everyone was writing like very personal things, and everyone was saying like, no, I want to see it like more recruiter friendly. And I think now we're making a switch to where I want to see, like a little bit of personality come back in to the work, you know? Why have you done this? What was your inspiration? Like where did you grab references from? Like kind of make it more personal. And then we have height, flow mask, and albedo. I'm curious. So vegetation and natural scattering driven by procedural volume generation, PVG. The focus on the project was in composition. Okay. So you didn't do any of the footage yourself. You were just focusing more on like pre-compiled assets, and then you're just doing the composition, right? I will say that these are interesting little projects to do to train your composition. I will also say at the same time that there's like not a lot of value for you getting hired because you do them, right? So I don't mind if you have like a bunch of compositions just like on your portfolio, and you're trying to have fun with it, right? And you're training your compositional eye. That's completely fine. But from a recruitment perspective, there's not a lot of value for me to looking to hire you. You know, just laying it all on the board. Conceptual Vision is saying AI is fine as an editor, but it needs editor prompts. Be specific about check for grammar mistake. tense sentence mistakes and so forth. Yeah, so what I tend to do is I am I am very quick with all this kind of stuff. Like let's say I make a description, I would say I would have like what I would do is I would literally here's the way that I would use it. So I would literally write down everything that I've done, right? And then I would tell it to like, hey, well not like everything that I've done, or like my description myself. I would then say like, hey, make this more interesting to read, right? And at the same point, it's going to read for grammar mistakes and all that kind of stuff. It does that stuff automatically. What it then gives me back, I would then maybe tweak it. But honestly, from that point on, I will just take that raw output if it's good, and I would then start adjusting it myself. That's the way that I tend to do this. I hate fucking around with just like prompting it for specific things. I just wanted to do like a very rough initial pass, and then I'll clean it up. That's fine. But then I know that my sentence structures are going to be like nicer, and that there's going to be less spelling mistakes and all that kind of stuff, right? Because yeah, especially also, I know that we focus a lot about descriptions. Descriptions are less important than anything visual that you have on your portfolio, right? So always keep that in mind. If your description is literally like, hey, this was a project where I really wanted to focus on composition, so I used Megascan's assets, linked to the Megascan assets, bam, done. That's completely fine. Completely fine. Interesting. So you went back to Blender now? Interesting. Oh, I guess are you are you trying to? I'm curious. So Yassin, is this are these projects trying to make you more versatile to different industries? Is that what you're trying to do here? It's okay if it is, by the way. I'm just wondering how we can structure it better then. Because it does look nice. But yeah, it is non-game related, right? So it is the Gaia pipeline is kind of related, and you can sort of transfer that that data to Unreal, but then all the scattering and all that kind of stuff is going to be specific to Blender, right? I want to say open for both film and games. That's why I'm decided to focus on realism. Right. In that case, what I would do with your portfolio is I would break it up between film and games. However, I will say that it is not necessarily something that I would recommend, because you're splitting your focus between two separate things, right? Which means that you're basically going to have to make two portfolios. That's basically what it comes down to. So yeah, that would be like one way to like, if you have here like environments for games and environments for films, having that separation would probably be a good way to say like, hey, look, here's all my work, but it's specific to things. What is also helpful with this is that you can build specific links to specific companies. So you can say like, hey, look, you're a film company. I want to apply here. Here's all my environments that I made for films, right? Send them that link, and they get a specific snippet of your work compared to doing the same thing for games. My first completed asset for my ongoing personal project. Nice. The text is pretty lengthy, so let's see the case. Details want to communicate multiple generations of ownerships and use. Yeah. Typical details. Multi Blender. Yeah. Oh, this is actually pretty funny. This is the first thing that I made when I joined BE. Yeah, I remember this. I remember the tunnel and like the vision that you had for the entire scene and all that kind of stuff, and like the Whip Wednesdays that we did. Yeah, it was really cool to see that. Um, But overall, a good presentation. A couple of tweaks that I would love to see is show me the full wireframe, right? Because now I'm not seeing the entire wireframe, which is kind of a shame. But I like that you're showing the wireframe. You have your texture map, your resolution, faces, triangles. You have your texture maps as well. You are struggling a little bit with some cropping here, buddy. What is happening here? So you have your full square texture here, and then it's like, oh shit, I'm kind of running out of space. So this is already that is the normal is already clipping a little bit, and then your ORM is like clipping even more. What I would say in this case, like move the logo here, or do the opposite thing where like you move the textures here, give them a little bit more space, and just give them like nice square textures, right? It's overlapping. I thought it would be a nice design choice. Okay, interesting little hint there. Your breakdowns are not about showing design; they're about showing functionality of information, right? So, what you are doing now is you're hiding information from me, right? And that's what I need. When you show game art, I want to see this information and how you broke things down, right? So, what might be like a nice design choice, for example, this thing as well, right? And don't get me wrong, I've done all the same stuff that we're seeing here, right? What you're doing here, what is a nice design choice, is also you not showing 50% of your wireframe, right? So those two comments that I had are like pretty similar, where it's like focus on the information first, make sure that the clarity of the information is always paramount, and then you can um add like design on top, right? But the functionality comes first, and then the design on top of it. But again, I like that you're doing this breakdown. Breakdown, it has all the information. Now we just need to make sure that the information like clearly readable, right? Um, but yeah, good little breakdown. I like what I see here. Rotation. What you could do, by the way, like this sort of GIF, you can turn that into like a little movie where you like rotate what is like the box with the overlay, and you can switch between the overlays and all that kind of stuff. Sure, it's a little bit more video editing that you have to do, right? But that's also a way of like combining those two, right? Like where you have like a nice showcase of like all the roughness details and stuff, showcased in one overlay, everything together. Cool. Yeah, great stuff. This is really good, man. Like presentation is really clean. I would say, um, and this is already what we're working on together, right? Is doing a little bit more storytelling, right? Like making a little bit of a scene around it. I know that you had some stuff lying around anyway. Um, so doing a little bit of set dressing there can be really helpful. But great first prop. Whenever you're showcasing things visually, for example, the technical details, these technical details don't need to be included. Try to shrink this down to, I don't know, one or two sentences, right? Um, so that people don't have to read like a Bible, because I can tell you that most people will probably do exactly the same that I do. As soon as they realize that it's just like a bunch of fluff, right? They're just gonna skip it entirely. Did we even talk about this? Feedback and critiques are always appreciated. This one is so funny because ArtStation is portfolio, and it's not a feedback website, right? Um, yeah. So yeah, this doesn't need to be in here. Like if it's on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, like it's totally fine. But like not on your ArtStation. I always find like ArtStation, when people even share their feedback on ArtStation, I always find it so weird. Yeah. Cool. Lily is saying once it's posted, I would rather not go back and implement feedback. It feels like a book that's closed. Well, yeah, and also like that's why, and you probably noticed me saying this a lot, right? In future projects, I'll say this a lot during these reviews because what I don't want people to get into the habit of is just like, oh, now I need to go back to like a 3-year-old project, make sure that the files are still like readable and like, oh my god, like I don't know where the textures are. It's like, no. That's fine. We learn from that. We make new stuff. At a certain point, that old stuff is going to be removed from your portfolio anyway. So we keep moving on, and over time, your portfolio is going to get better by you being more selective of what's going to be on your portfolio. Um, yeah, but it's I've seen some very in-depth people getting very picky about like what they want to give feedback on someone's portfolio, and I'm always like, not the time, nor the place, and also like no one asked. Like I know that sounds rude, but like on a portfolio website, it's done, and sometimes it's done out of the goodness of people's hearts, right? But yeah, it's a weird place to do it. We got some questions in the chat. So ASR is saying, would you recommend to add a 3D view by using Sketchfab, the way the viewer has complete control over what they want to see? No. The reason why I wouldn't recommend that is because it is slowing down the speed of being able to browse your portfolio, right? So if you add a Sketchfab asset, you then have to click on it, you have to wait for it to load, you have to go into the menu, you have to click the wireframe, and then you can have a look at it, right? I would never recommend you to use that, but you can use it as an additional thing. So let's say Yassin in this case cleans up the view here, right? And makes it look like really nice and readable. It's okay to then also add like a marmoset viewer as an additional thing. But it's always good to have it in like clean, instantly loading images that you can immediately read what the hell's going on. Because I can guarantee you that if you ask people to do additional clicks, a lot of people are not going to do additional clicks. So these portfolio reviews, for example, I am very in depth. I'm very thorough. I read the descriptions. I kind of go through the entire post. If I was in recruiter mode, like it would be totally different, right? Like I'll show you what that looks like. It is literally just like, okay, cool. I saw that. That's it. Because from that point, I already knew like everything that I kind of wanted to see. And maybe I'll have a quick look. It's in Unreal, cool. A little bit of breakdown, cool. Can make it Unreal. I'm not even going to click the video. Right? And that comes from if you're in recruitment mode, you're focusing on hundreds of people in some cases, right? So it's more about the initial impression. And then if the person makes a good initial impression, then from that first selection, if you get chosen, then we do like a deeper dive, right? So that's where that comes from. That's the context behind it. Super Derp is saying, hi, never knew you did portfolio reviews. I assume it's part of being a member. Currently a student aiming for 3D environment arts. I got to do an internship in half a year or so for school, so might be interested. Hell yeah. Yeah. It is a member exclusive thing. We are gonna be moving the portfolio reviews into the Discord as well. So there will be less live streams in the future, but we're gonna make them more in-depth and more personal. So that's the future goal of it. So from August, we're gonna be doing these sort of reviews internally. With hopefully people being there live to chat about things more. Cool. Yassin, let's talk about the work here. So what stood out? So even from the work, you can tell that it's sort of focused on two branches at once, right? So um, how would I say this? I think it's a good overall first impression for being this early in your climbing the ladder to get into game art, right? Um, so I think you're already on a good track. I like the latest assets and the breakdown that comes with it. Even though that one is like a little bit simple, right? It's straight to the point, but it still shows that you know how to make an asset, um, and that you have done your best in presenting it, and it's a good start, right? That's what I really really like here. So it's a good start. We're seeing the initial phase of a career build out happening here. What I would say is split the work between game art and animation focused, right? Because that was a little bit confusing, right? Like we went through all the project and it was like, oh, it's Blender, oh, it's Unreal, oh, it's Blender, oh, it's Unreal. So clean it up a little bit from like a presentation perspective. It's going to be good. Um, yeah, currently the higher ability. It's interesting, right? Like it's very niche. It's terrains, but I'm not seeing like it's almost like you're focused on the implementations. You're almost only focused on the implementation of the terrain and the scattering of pre-existing assets, right? Whereas it's kind of going into the same comments that I had about like this one, right? Where it's just about, oh, it's about composition, and the rest of it is like made by someone else. I want to see you do more, and I know you're doing more already, but I want to see you do more prop creation, texture creation, all those kind of things that make you a more versatile and hireable person at the moment, right? Because currently your hireability is going to be pretty low because it is mainly focused on just like, okay, terrain scattering, right? And then I know that you can do some of this stuff here, but yeah, this is a good first try. But there's not too many places that this sort of stuff is going to be applicable to, right? It's awesome. Great first stab at like an environment. I like your sense of scope and scale, right? Like that's something to build on, making something small and detailed. That's good. But yeah, from like a hiring perspective, it's going to be really difficult to hire you for something like this at this point. This then is going into like a really good direction for game arts. Keep building on this stuff, and that's going to go into like a really nice direction, right? We're doing some stuff together. That shows a lot of promise. So yeah, let's see here. So hireability, presentation can be uplifted a lot. I think a lot of it comes down to lighting, your composition. Even for example, we didn't talk about it that much, but even if you have like a building here, you know, and then you put like a tree in front of it, you're basically obscuring like the most interesting part of like the environment, right? It's not a dedicated focal point, all that kind of stuff. We talked about that a lot in our time together as well. And continue to talk about it too. So I won't go too deep into detail. Artistic skills. Artistic skills are. This is interesting. So let's start with techniques. So with techniques, we can only really focus on this one, right? I know. I love that you can already do some baking. I like what is happening with it. I can see some issues with it already, though. Like I assume that your high poly was like way too tight, or that you, I don't know, maybe uh didn't have like the proper way of setting up like your edges and your mesh normals, right? Because I'm kind of seeing some like weird normal information, and also like the bevels and the edges. They are getting a lot of information from the grunges, but I'm not seeing a lot of influence from the normal. These are like almost like low poly edges where I kind of want to see like nice, rounded, like high poly bevels happening, right? So that is giving me a hint at you not 100% understanding yet how to correctly bake something, right? That's kind of giving me a hint at that. So that's why you're scoring a little bit lower on techniques. And then let's say on the artistic side, yeah, you are getting there. I do like the big landscapes. I do like the big landscapes. But in general, like it's very hard to kind of judge it on artistic skills specifically for games because we're so focused on player leading and focal points and all that kind of stuff that we're not seeing any of that just yet. It almost feels like we're way more focused, well, with the terrains especially, makes sense. Focused more on the animation side and just like scattering stuff, right? So I'm gonna get a 2 for that one. Again, a lot of that is based on where you currently are. I know and I've seen you work really hard on your next project. I like where that is going. It shows a lot of potential. It's going to be like a massive shift in your portfolio currently. So, yeah, even in like a couple of months, we're going to be talking about like a great different number. But right now, this is where we currently stand, right? You had a question as well, so let me already add this one. And again, thank you for sharing your work. I really appreciate it. Let me share your ArtStation again so that people can check it out and follow for future updates. Um, so Eisendrag is saying, I do have a lot of characters that are game ready and others are made for film. Should I keep this out of the portfolio? Well, I'll ask a question back. Do you want to be a character artist? Right? Think about that question. Superderp is saying, would be awesome. Still gotta upgrade quite a lot on my portfolio, but that is what my next year and a half is going to be used for. Lots of work to do. Hell yeah, hell yeah! I'm looking forward to seeing all the hard work being done. Yeah, looking forward to it. So yeah, Sin, I know that there's like quite a long delay here, but yeah, is that a thing that you want to do? Characters? God, the delay on YouTube sometimes is so annoying. And while we wait for the answer, Nomi is asking, is it even worth to try and go into the games industry? I mean, there's a lot of pressure and trying to please the studio. Of course, everyone needs to answer that for themselves. But what is your point of view? I think honestly, you nailed it in the first section, right? For me, making worlds that I could run around in, or like coming up with like new ideas and worlds and all that kind of stuff, was always the thing that I was gonna do. I loved it. I love every second of it. Even now, when I have to do boring shit like doing like UVs or I don't know, like any kind of stuff, I love it because I know it's in part of like the bigger picture, right? So for me, answering the question, is it worth to even try to go in the games industry? Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. It is definitely worth it. For me, it is, oh my god. Yeah. It is awesome working in the games. Sure. Is it difficult now? 100%. Has it always been difficult? Yes, it has always been difficult. I think sure, like current trends have exacerbated an issue that was always there. Because even when I kind of went into this industry, right? A lot of people that I graduated with, fellow game artists, they are not game artists anymore. And that is because they discovered something different, or it was like really difficult to get into the industry. It wasn't sustainable. It wasn't, you know, it's yeah, it's whatever you kind of make of it, right? But I cannot see myself doing anything else. Like making real time environments for games. There's something about it that has gripped me and is not letting go. I know that I'm not when I just finished my last contract, right? So I'm currently just focusing on Beyond Extend. But I'm even doing like personal work. just because I love to make it. And I think that periods like this are a huge test for your personal conviction if this is even a thing that you want to do or not. Because if I'm really being honest, I think the people that really want to do it, they're not even asking that question. And I know that sounds dumb, right? And there's definitely some serious discussions to be had about like, like does that even make sense to not even think about your future prospects, right? There's definitely a big question around that. But that has always been my perception. Like the people that just want to do this, they're not even asking themselves that question. Does that make sense? It's probably like a die-hard approach to this, but I think that the games industry specifically, is like a pretty hardcore industry to be in. Know me, yeah, that is true. But can I tell you one thing? If you are intimidated by, well, maybe intimidation is the wrong word, but like if you are scared or let's say intimidated, I don't know. I don't want to put like feelings into your brain, right? But I know a lot of people are of just getting into the games industry. I can tell you that making your first game and selling it and making it successful is 1,000 times harder than trying to get into the games industry. So it's not like making your own game and trying to sell it is like an easy option. There's like, what is the current counter? I think we're at like 20,000 games that have been released this year on Steam. Have fun trying to stand out in that, right? So yeah. And it takes ages, like Lily is saying, it takes ages to build your own game. You also need to learn all the roles too. You need to set up a business. You need to manage a business. Yeah, yeah. Like I'm saying, I'm not trying to scare you away. I think what I see now, and I get where you're coming from, right? Like that's the thing. I get where you're coming from. Where the traditional option of getting to the games industry is kind of getting like really difficult. So I see a lot of people grasping for, hey, I'm just gonna make my own game. And to be fair, I don't think in the current state of the industry, I don't think that's like a bad option at all. But comparing it comparing it to getting into the games industry and thinking that that is like a risk averse option, God, you're like in for a rough ride, honestly. Because that is even less easy. But here's the thing: I was listening to one of the co-founders, or like the founder of Arcane Lyon, right? He did a fantastic interview, and I loved it so much. It was so much that I resonated with. Let me see if I can find it. Antonio, what was his surname again? Dang it. Yeah, let me see if I can quickly find it because I do want to share the link. Super interesting to listen to. Let me see. Was it this podcast? Oh, come on. Oh, stop with the shorts. Hold on. Devoted talks. No, I don't want to see shorts. Ugh, YouTube. So this is the talk that I'm referring to. So like how Arcane survived like long enough to create Dishonored. It's with Rafael Colantonio. Fantastic talk. Like I recommend it. I'll send it in the chat as well. Um, really interesting to listen to it. And like what I really resonated with is, and I want to counter, like put a counterpoint to what I just said to you, right? That it is not going to be easy. That breaking into the games industry is not going to be easy. Making your own game is not going to be easy. All that kind of stuff is true. But also, I don't mean that in like a discouraging way, right? And I think it goes back to like the previous point that I said about like people wanting to get into the industry. There are some people who have that same attitude to making their own game that they have compared to like people wanting to get into the industry. They don't think about like the 20,000 games that get released. They don't give a fuck about what everyone else is doing. They're just building their own game because they love it and they're going to release it regardless of the perception and the reception of it, right? Um, and I think that's also what he was saying. Like you have to be somewhat naive. You have to be somewhat dumb to the consequences. And the only thing that he wanted to do was like make Arc Fatalis, you know? And he got like 4 people together and like on no salary. And that's how they built the game. And that's what built like Arcane Leon. And people are doing that today as we speak. But if there's a certain part, and I'm sort of guilty. Well, not guilty. I tend to rationalize a bunch of things. I don't think that you can rationalize your way into making a game or getting into the industry majority of the time. A lot of it is going to be irrational. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Communication is also such an important part of starting your own game. If you don't find people you communicate well with, it's going to be an issue also. Well, yeah, I mean, oh my god, there's just so many issues. There's your own personal ego. There's communication. There's starting a business. There's getting funding. There's making a good design, like coming up with a unique idea, like actually implementing the idea, finding a good programmer, doing the design. Oh my god. Oh my god. It is so difficult and so worth it as well. So yeah, I hope that didn't scare you away, Nomi, because that was not the intent. Um, yeah, I think that's currently the stage that we're in, right? That the traditional idea of going into AAA and having like a cushy job and all that kind of stuff is kind of broken. And that's why you see people just taking risks because might as well do it, right? Might as well. Let's see. Going back to Yassin for a second. Character art as a junior isn't really a thing. I'd love to take a crack at it in the future, but I know breaking in won't be through characters. Hmm. Um. Well, that is kind of hinting at something like really interesting, Yasin. So does that mean that you actually want to do characters and that you're just using environment art as like a way to get in? Because I don't think that that's a good way of building your career. Because here's the thing. Here's the thing that I always struggle with that, right? Is that let's say you want to do character art and you spend building up your portfolio of making environments, right? So you're going to get hired to do environment art, let's say. Now you're spending 8 hours of your day building environments while you're trying your best. While you're trying your best to carve out some time to do characters. Because think about this, like if you have a full-time job, that's what you're going to be doing 8 hours a day, right? And then plus your commute and all that kind of stuff. So let's say 10 hours a day. You're doing this stuff already. Um and then you have to carve out some time to do character art on top of it if you want to make a switch. That is rough. Not impossible, but it is rough. You're saying I do like environments and creating them, but I also won't say no to the opportunity for characters later on if it comes up. That feels like a non-answer to me, especially from a positioning perspective of positioning yourself as a person in this industry. It's almost like you add environments and characters and all that kind of stuff to your portfolio, right? And then you're putting the burden on me to kind of figure out what you want to do, right? And I can tell you from a recruitment perspective, as soon as I see characters and environments, I'm skipping. Because that indicates that you don't know what you want to be doing. And let's say we want to hire you for our company, right? You become like a full-fledged member of our company. I want to know that I'm putting you in a good position where you're going to be interested in it and where you're going to be driving forward the art of that game, whether that is characters or environments, I don't really care. I just want to know that I'm putting you in the right position for that, right? So that's why the recommendation against like adding characters and environments and props and all that kind of stuff to your portfolio, that's where that comes from. Because it makes it super difficult for a company to decide where they want to put you. Sure, there might be occasional things where, let's say, there's an outsourced company that does characters and environments. I do think those are pretty rare because they don't tend to survive for too long. They might want to hire you, but that's not what the industry is built on, right? So that's where that comes from. So if you're, I would think about it already from, hey, what would I want to spend 8 hours a day working on? If that answer is characters, then make characters. If that answer is environments, make environments. That's what it comes down to. Because the risk is if you're trying to apply your skills to, let's say, multiple different sectors and multiple different disciplines, you're spreading yourself so thin that you can never get good at any of them. And that's a real risk, right? Because it is still a market that is driven by people that know their shit and are good at what they do, right? And even now, when sort of like the fabric is kind of like coming loose a little bit, and generalization is more of a topic that we talk about, we are not talking about generalization where people can do environments and characters. We're talking about generalization in the perspective of like environments. You can, let's say you're an environment artist, and you can also do foliage, and you can also do rock sculpting, and you can also make a prop. So it's still limited to that bracket, right? I was wondering about the transferable skills with soft body modeling and sculpting, etc. To show that that's showcasing. I conflicted. Oh, that without showcasing that I'm conflicted in my direction. No, if you want to add characters, I would not do it. I would potentially, what I could consider, depending on how good they look, right, and how recent they were, I would say that you can have a separate portfolio, maybe, where you can then add characters onto that you can then use for character applications, right? I've not seen the characters, so I don't know what we're talking about here, but yeah, that could be a potential strategy for you to work with in the short term. But in the long term, I still want to see you carve out a space for yourself. Nomi is saying, no, I mean, I was in the industry before, and I have seen students that have better art than me. Yeah, I mean, that's also 100% true, right? Like, the same thing goes for me, by the way. Like, there are some students out there that are like freaking good at what they do, but the skill set that you bring to the table as like, let's say, a mid or a senior is completely different than the skill set of a junior who's really good at art, right? Because what we bring to the table as seniors is that's the experience that we have from building games over and over, is that we can kind of see issues coming from like miles away, where a junior, like if you just let them do their thing, right, let's say we're going to go for like a really simple example, they would make an open world game by only doing high to low poly modeling, right? But as like a more experienced person, you know that that's going to be no chance, right? But that's like one of the differences there, right? So we just bring something else to the table that like students with better art bring to the table, right? Conceptual Vision is saying seniors, I guess, have developed taste, and although they can't do anything, their taste is superior. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Hey, hey! Shots fired! I can do stuff. um, I wouldn't call it taste because that's not necessarily like their responsibility in the job, right? Like that's more like art director. Um, misspoke. It's all good. No, that's more like art director territory, right? They have to have a taste because their taste and their insights into the industry is what's going to make it into the direction of the art, right? Seniors are going to think high level, are going to be used for like very important things in the game that are going to have like a massive impact, right? Um, For example, when I was working on like Far Cry back in the day, my responsibilities were, so we had let me see, 11 locations on a map. I was responsible for um I was responsible for the start and final location because those were like the most important locations. So I was building them out, I was doing set dressing, all that kind of stuff. And then we had like juniors and mids that were kind of doing like the set dressing in between and other locations, right? Technically back then I wasn't even a senior, but I got promoted after Far Cry, blah blah blah. But I was doing the senior job anyway. Um, yeah, so maybe taste is more art director territory. It's more like we see things coming and we develop the benchmarks and we set things up for the rest of the team, right? And we help develop the talent and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that sounds very reasonable. I have been thinking about that ever since I graduated. At the end of the day, the dream is to work in production, not specifically a role, but to step into that for me. But yeah, the issue with that thinking is though that in this market, you are competing with a bunch of people who have already figured out where they want to go and they're doing specifically what they need to do to get into that production role, right? That's or not specifically, they're doing as best as they can to get into that role. So from that perspective, why would I then hire a person who is kind of just like, hey, I don't know what to do. Just like put me anywhere, and I guess I'll figure it out. When there are people who have already figured it out, and they are also on the job market, right? That's sort of a way to look at it from like a job market perspective, where you're in this pool. How do you stand out? That is not by kind of being like kind of generic and you can kind of do a little bit of everything. Yeah, that's not how you stand out. Um, Bivan is coming in and is asking, is preparing a portfolio to solve design problems more important than the full high quality illustration now, since AI can generate high quality illustrations? I saw a lot of the AEGC art from Red Note there. Uh, I have no AIGC. AI generated concept art from like Red Note there? I have no idea. I have no idea what that last bit means. But you're talking about design and illustration, right? So like concept art. Like I'm focused on game art specifically, right? And for context, I'm a 3D environment artist. So I've never done any concept art or any illustrations. But preparing a portfolio to solve design problems more important than full high quality illustrations now? It has always been. That's what a lot of people get wrong with concept art. Concept art has never been about pretty pictures, it has been about ideation and solving problems. So if you make pretty pictures, you're already going in the wrong direction for concept art for games, right? There is a really good podcast from the Art Nest. So it's a person. Let me see. Let me share it. That talks about this all the time. Uh, not that art nest. There's a couple of art nests. See, where can I go? Here you go. Who was behind it again? Let me see if I can get like his name. Doo-doo-doo. Where is his name? So much information here. Ah. Anyway, there's a podcast from the Artness that talks about this stuff all the time. He's very active on LinkedIn as well. He's sharing a bunch of stuff. This is a premium mentorship. Um, yeah, Andrea Timothée Maton. Yeah, so the Artness is from Timothée Maton. Um, So he's running like a premium mentorship. That's his like mentorship that he's running. He talks about this stuff all the time, has been doing this for like years and years and years. But concept art has always been about ideation. Ideation, problem solving has always been the thing. For example, most most of the helpful stuff that I get as a 3D environment artist that gets concept art, right? And gets concept art and then needs to execute on it. I don't care how good it looks. I just need to understand how it functions. And that's what helps me the most. So yeah, very, very important. Timothée Maton. Do you have a favorite concept artist within games or overall? God, a favorite concept artist. There's so many good ones, honestly. Feng Zhu has probably been one of my favorite ones. Daniel Doshu, probably one of my favorites. Because the thing that I always loved is that they were more expressive. They 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 don't really care about like clean artwork, or they don't care about that. They were more about like expressing the idea and building the world and building functional pieces rather than like nice clean stuff that you can kind of look at, right? So those are like two ones that have been like on my mind like forever. They're like they're honestly like the traditional ones, right? Feng Zhu. If you wanna listen to a good podcast about like art fundamentals, oh my god. The Feng Zhu design, like design cinema, that whole series, it has like over 100 videos now. So good. So good. We're sharing a bunch of really interesting resources today, but let me share this one as well. Feng Zhu design cinema. God, so good. Oh my god. I need to rewatch like a whole bunch of these. Let me see. Can I actually just share like the entire playlist? Here you go. I think Artim is more premium. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Here's a playlist for Feng Shui Design, like all the resources that has been putting out for years now. You know, like the first thing that they put out 16 years ago, that's, I mean, I didn't start that early, but like definitely like 15, 14 years ago, like I was listening to this stuff like on the regular. Oh my God, so good. He talks about like time management. He talks about like, like a bunch of good stuff. Really good stuff. Really good stuff. It looks like not all of the episodes are on there because he talks about he talks about like more recent stuff as well. But he has like a more recent episodes that are not in the playlist that I just shared. So look that up. Feng also talked about the students. They seem to solve a design problem within them, and after they reached about like 200 environment paintings. That's interesting info. Um, that's a lot of episodes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I loved it. And also, like I do want to say, like Feng Zhu has always been a massive inspiration of me wanting to build like Beyond Extend, and then also doing like still in industry work because he ran a school called Feng Zhu Design. And he also had like his own design studio at the same time as well. He was fucking mental. Like like there are some people where I think I put in a lot of time, right? No way. Like there are people that are still like way above, like putting in time compared to me. Um, yeah, a lot of really interesting things. Like for example, there's the five whys. He talks about this as well. The five W's. Um, who, what, where, why, like all those things. Like I talk about that stuff all the time too because that's super important for building a good story in your environments, right? So there's a lot of stuff that you can learn from it. Yeah, I think mine would be Alan Lee, just because it was a part of my favorite franchises ever. Alan Lee, let's have a look. Let's see. I don't think I've seen probably seen the work, right? But yeah. I'm so out of touch. Yeah, I guess this is more like okay, so when I think about concept art in my realm, right, I'm very much focused on like the digital versions, right? I'm not even thinking about like people like Alan Lee, for example, with like the Lord of the Rings. Yeah, so good. So good. Here's the thing, you can really learn a lot about concept art. Just in the way that they use focal points, the way that they structure literally the fundamental bones of their work. Oh my god, you can learn so much from concept art. So good. Our current situation in Malaysia is that a lot of graduates can't get our jobs. Some even come from the one academy college. I'm not sure how this is happening in jobs applying everywhere. Um, Are we talking favorite concept artists? Yes, we are. Feel free to share your favorite concept artist in the chat. Bivon is saying, so our current situation in Malaysia is that a lot of the graduates can get our jobs. Some even come from the one academy college. I have no idea what that college is. I don't know what they pump out in terms of like quality. I'm not sure how this is happening in jobs, applying everywhere. So, I mean, this is happening everywhere, right? Like we are dealing with a restriction in funds in games everywhere. So we saw this, for example, with the Xbox layoffs, right? And with the Xbox cancellations and switching projects around and all that kind of stuff. We talk a lot about the 1,600 people that have already been fired and the 1,600 people that are going to get fired and all the projects that are going to be shifted around and canceled because of it, right? That and yeah, not even talking about like the studios that they're going to spin off and all that kind of stuff. Um, what we see is the top of the iceberg, right? We see the tip of the iceberg. What is also going to happen is that there's a lot of outsourced companies and external developers and all that kind of stuff that are also going to get hit by all these changes too, right? So that might be one reason. It might also be because a lot of the graduates just aren't good enough to stand out in the current job market. The current job market is super competitive. And if you don't stand out in some way, then that's it. I can't really speak to the one academy specifically, right? But yeah, there's a lot of things that might be happening at the same time. Andrea saying, Tim, may I ask, have you ever failed an artist or not being able to complete one? Recently I was given one and I couldn't complete it and I feel upset about it. At least I know it's something to work on. Yes, I have failed all my artists that I've ever done. Here you go. How's that for a quote? I'm not even kidding. I wish I was. I wish I was, but I've done 5 multi-week. Wait, no, that's not true. I've done 5 artists, of which I think 3 were multi-week artists, oftentimes back to back, and I failed all of them. Some of it was because there was one that I did for the Division, right back in the day. I think it was like even before the Division came out. I think when did the Division come out? Let me get my timeline straight. When did that come out? 2016. Yeah, it must have been around that time that I applied. So I did an art test for Ubisoft Massive for the Division. The reason why I failed that art test was because I didn't know how to level design, right? Or I didn't. It wasn't supposed to be like a level design test, but it was supposed to be an environment art test that had like level design elements kind of built into it. I had never even thought about level design, so that completely sucked. I also misread the briefing where they said like, "Oh, create 2 spaces, and one is going to be an interior, one is going to be an exterior." And I was like, "Okay, I'm just going to merge them together because I misread it, and I just made it like one big space." Um, yeah. Another one was because it was a prop test, And I failed that one because, for example, I mean, I suck at props. I suck at props. I mean, I can make a prop, but I'm not a prop artist, so of course I'm gonna suck at that. There was another one where I had to do a level art test, which was also like somewhat level design based for Ubisoft Annecy. Was for a That was for a ski game. I completely failed that one as well. I can't remember the feedback on that one. Um, there were a couple of other ones, but yeah. One time I created a crematorium instead of a shelf in an artist. No worries. Yeah, I actually have an article that I was kind of reading, no, writing about like how to do an artist. And honestly, the first paragraph is about read the brief, take an hour, read the brief again, take another hour, read the brief again. Because there's so many things that I learned by just like rereading the brief, and it's oh my god, if I just read the brief multiple times, I would have saved so much hassle, honestly. Oh my god. But Andrea, don't feel bad about it. I think the most important thing is that you learn something that you can improve, right? I think what I learned about myself as well is that there are some jobs that even if I were to succeed in the artist, I wouldn't have loved doing the job anyway. For example, that prop test, I was just doing the test because I was just desperate to kind of get out and I wanted to do like a new job and I was moving from Frontier Developments to somewhere else, right? Um so I was just taking everything. But that goes to the previous comments that we had about Yassin's portfolio or just that situation in general. My work does not apply to a prop artist, right? So that makes sense that I'm not getting a job at that. Makes total sense. So yeah, hoping that was helpful. But hey, it's okay. You're gonna. It sucks. I know it sucks a lot, but just see it as you've been given an opportunity, and that's already like way better than a lot of other people are getting out there. So that means that you're on the right track. McFella saying, so you were almost an honorary Swede? Yeah, who knows? Who knows? I would be working together with Jeremy from Dynasty himself, Who knows? Sarah Papa is saying, I tend to think when something doesn't work out, it's usually for the best and you'll find something way better down the line as well. Yeah, yeah, I tend to believe that too, or it is like an opportunity to learn something about yourself, right? Because with every artist that I did, I learned a lot, honestly. Nomi is saying, careful about big artists. Some companies are using this to get free assets. Applicants create. Artists are also just to test your skill, not to create new content for the game. Yep, 100%. That's good to keep in mind. All the tests that I've done were for like recognizable big companies that weren't looking for like new assets, right? But yeah, I know that there's like a lot of scams going around like these days. So yeah, fuck, I hate that so much. Maybe it was a good thing I didn't because it was a contract one for the Fab marketplace, and I wouldn't get a percentage of the sales. I would probably have, and if I wouldn't get a percentage of the sales, I would probably have wasted my time. Yeah. I've done a stream like a month ago where I talk a lot about my feelings about some of the contractors out there that are building up their own vast content platforms by honestly just manipulating and making use of just like juniors desperate for a job. And I fucking hate it. I hate it. The only thing why that can exist is because people are desperate and they want a job in games. Um, let's see. A couple of concept artists again. Max Budalenko. Yeah, he makes cool stuff. Not biased at all because like some of his stuff is like mostly inspired by like cities in like Belgium. So definitely not definitely not biased there. Eddie Mendoza. Oh yeah, from like the one thing that I remember is like the medieval, the fantasy medieval town, right? That people still like replicate to this day. Really cool. And then Adamovich did the concepts for Fallout 3. Would be my favorite artists. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good list. Marco Bucco as a concept artist. I love his style. Yeah. Bucci. Marco Bucci. Let's have a quick browse. He's the Major of Genoa. Thanks. That is so helpful. Oh yeah, that's cool. I like it. Yes, yes. The artist comes to mind. I think it was the artist. I think it was the artist one. I remember you did a portfolio review and someone did something for that studio and they didn't even get the credit for it. Yep. I will not spiral again. If you just want to watch like my little crash out, feel free to go back to that episode. Yeah, so one of the tenants, and here's the thing. I'm not saying that this is an easy thing, right? Like trying to build up something like beyond extent. Fuck. It is so stressful. It is so stressful. From just a financial perspective, right? Trying to compensate people well for their time because that's something that I truly believe in, while also trying to make a big platform that is gonna hopefully be usable and functional and also gonna be profitable, right? Like more importantly. I don't know. Scares me. And I know that some of the most of the people that we talk to have been very kind and hopefully they've been compensated really well, right? I think we do, like knowing my own rates and other people's rates and all that kind of stuff. I think we have a good grip on that. So I know where the incentives are coming from. I just hate that it is built on the back of desperate juniors trying to get in. Like that's not something that I agree with. Yeah. If it was set up as like a win-win, I would be 100% a part of it and I would be like promoting it as well. But it's just not. Um is Decagon doing it the clean way? Yeah, I think Decagon is like way more reputable in that way, for sure. Decagon, here's the thing, like even Decagon, I know has changed the way that they did their payment structure. Because in the beginning, what they did, and they did this for a good reason, they believed in the same sort, and they still do believe in the same values of getting people compensated fairly, right? So what they did is they had a payment structure where you would get a percentage of sales. I think in perpetuity, right? So there are still people that I know that I've worked with Decagon in the beginning that are still getting paid out for like some of the early stuff they did all the way in the beginning, right? Um, but that system is super rare because the reason why is because it's super complex to maintain and set up from a business perspective, right? You have to, first of all, find a way to break up everyone's individual contributions into some sort of measurable item or quantity so that you can then use that to break down the profitability of that project into those individual pieces, right? That's why it probably makes more sense if you're doing something like that you run a marketplace instead and then just skim a percentage of the top, right? Or maybe even don't. That makes more sense. But Decagon also changed that over time just because if you think about the scale that Decagon is operating at now, that would just be a fucking nightmare to maintain. So at a certain point, they just went, well, from my understanding at least, they kind of went more to like a flat rate, right? And that is a no slight to like that they don't believe in like compensating artists, because I think they do, and I still believe that. But it's just, yeah, that structure is really, really hard to keep up with. Yeah, and then even some of the options, like let's say Flip Normals, right? Like they run a marketplace that was like really profitable for people that were really successful there. That becomes then a thing where, oh, now instead of like making art, you're running a marketplace. So yeah, now you have to do that, right? Whereas as your Decagon, if you want to just like make cool shit, you have to run it kind of as like a company like Decagon, because then you can still be involved with making the stuff rather than having to run a marketplace, right? So it's really tricky. It's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing to set all this stuff up and then find a financial structure that aligns with what artists are looking for. But yeah, there are a lot of players in the game that need to do way better than they do. For me, the single most important thing is that the people that we work with will talk about our collaboration in a positive way. That's most of the stuff that I care about, right? And sometimes, sure, there's business that has to go into it as well, right? Like sometimes we don't work with people that are like too expensive. Sometimes we also do the opposite, where sometimes people cut themselves, they undercut themselves, and we increase the prices for them as well. Because I do really believe that I want to be a part of the movement where people can kind of figure out what their individual value is, and that their work means something into monetary perspective. Do we get it right all the time? Fuck no. No, because we're trying to figure something out at the same time as well as they do, right? Yeah. Let's see. Do outsource studios like that either pay in residuals or sales percentage? I don't think so. I don't think so. Um, it is very rare. I can see a situation where, let's say, a new outsource studio comes up and they want to recruit really key talent. That's when you'll get like paid in residuals or like sales percentages, right? If you are just jumping in as a junior, there's no way. I think that's I've never heard about it myself. Let's say it like that. Conceptual Vision is saying, I did a lot of props for Turbo Squid about 10 years ago, and what ruined everything back then was the undercutting just started to run wild. Yeah. I mean, also, Turbo Squid has like, I don't know what it was back then, but like Turbo Squid always has this weird thing where the more you sell, the bigger your cut becomes, right? So there's that whole angle behind it. And also there's just like, fuck, Turbo Squid. Like even back then when I was just getting into 3D, it was just fucking quality was all over the place, right? And I don't actually know professional companies who buy from TurboSquid, especially with like things like Fab and all these other marketplaces out there. Oh. With today, it feels like people want quality work with the least amount of money to give out. Well, so here's the thing though, right? Like that is technically what the incentive of the business is, right? So I am not opposed to, let's say, you as a company wanting to increase your margins by spending less on, let's say, people that make content for you, right? I am not necessarily opposed to that idea, because there are market fluctuations that happen constantly. And if you have a lot of talent who is just looking for a job, that means that you can get it for cheaper because there's so much demand, right? So I don't necessarily mind it per se, but if you then at the same time also strip them from their rights to their own work, don't give them credit when they worked on it and all that kind of stuff, that's just fuck. Like that's just decency. That doesn't even have to do with like the amount that you need to get paid, right? Because payment is always a negotiation, right? So that's also why I say always negotiate. Always. Even when you think that you have nothing to say in the negotiations, at least try. At least try. Because a good company will negotiate. And I think a company can really show what they're made of if you just give them a number, right? Like, so let's say we're talking to each other and you give me a number, I will always give you a number back. Unless I was looking to do like some nefarious thing and I'm not even interested in the conversation because I'm just going to talk to someone else, right? You know what I mean? That's the way that I tend to look at it. If they're really interested in getting you on, and if they can't match the price that you're saying, they will still talk to you. So yeah, City Trader was better, but I gave all that up in the end. Yeah, I think. Yeah, from my perspective, I think people that want to make content for, like, let's say Fab or Unreal Engine Marketplace or something like that, like, you can make a successful career in it, but you need to be a person that does the marketing and all that kind of stuff on top of it as well. Sorry, Satish, you were asking a question before. We kind of got sidetracked. So, as a rookie, should I start as a generalist or a specialist? Where I live, third world country, recruiters are mostly looking for Swiss Army knives. I don't know what I should do. I really like prop art. I mean, if you are telling me that recruiters in your area are looking for Swiss Army knives, then and you want to have a job quickly, that's what you should be doing, right? I don't know the local area. Yeah. What my recommendation would be is to look at your skill set as like an inverse T, right? If you really like prop art, you can make that the main thing and then do other things on the side. But if you're trying to get into like a more established, well-known company, you're gonna have to specialize. Time for me to head on off, says MS Art. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Let's see. Thank you for the sub, Kong D. I really appreciate it. And welcome to the community. Let's see. Yeah. But yeah, some good conversations. And yeah, we'll see where the future goes. There's a lot of interesting opportunities when it comes to Fab being more integrated within Unreal Engine, right? I think that's currently like one of the bigger opportunities. It seems like they're really desperately trying to build a platform. So if you can be a part of that initial wave of becoming a platform, I think that could be really interesting. But who knows? Who knows where this stuff is going to go? Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. I am going to do more work, take a little bit of a break, and then do more work. So it was nice having you all here. Thank you so much. Also, for people that have missed this announcement, next week we will do a final Whip Wednesday stream and a final. We are also doing a final portfolio reviews, but we are going to move them inside the Discord, right? So no more YouTube live streams. We're going to do it inside the Discord, and then we're gonna do that, so that we can increase the interaction that we have between each other. I want to talk to people as I'm doing reviews. That would be super nice. So yeah, just as an announcement, last week we will do the final live streams, and then we'll move everything inside of the Discord as well. So that being said, thank you all for your support. Thank you for the good questions and conversations, and I wish you all a nice rest of your day. Bye bye. Oh, and have a good weekend, I guess.